Welcome back, everybody, to the Overwatch League. And yep, if you're just joining us here, we are in our second game of the day for the North American Winners Bracket Quarterfinals. It's going to be some bangers, I'm telling you right now, because we are going to be witnessing the Los Angeles Valiant go up against the Florida Mayhem. This is a battle that has been going on all season long, Josh. It feels like me and you have covered a lot of them as well, and these teams are so evenly matched. We've seen both of them just go blow for blow. But of course, a reminder of the games for the day. The one I've just mentioned being, of course, the Valiant versus Mayhem. That's the one coming up. That will decide the winner who goes up against the Fusion tomorrow on Sunday. But of course, straight after this one, we've got two more matches that are going to decide things. It's the number 2 seed versus the Washington Justice in number 12, and then the Atlanta Reign versus the Paris Eternal. So 2 decider matches where we could see upsets, maybe.
Yeah. Great games the whole way through.
Potential.
At the same time, this is our closest match in terms of the seedings. And the last time that these two teams faced off in the season, it was actually a reverse sweep where the Valiant were able to get a couple of opportunities to get back into a series, and they won overall. The Florida Mayhem went up 2-0 early on in the series, but they just couldn't secure the victory. I would say the Florida Mayhem maybe even played the better Overwatch in that series, especially at the beginning.
Sure.
But they just couldn't close it out, and that's something the Mayhem have been struggling with in these big games. And honestly, Brent, this game was a bit of a microcosm of their season overall, and especially this rivalry. Most people would tell you, experts in the scene, that the Florida Mayhem have been the better team over the course of 2020. They've made the grand finals of the May Melee, they've been performing well against top teams, but they haven't beaten the Valiant at all this season.
Yeah.
The last team the Mayhem beat the Valiant was in Stage 2 of 2018. So the Mayhem just doesn't beat the Valiant. I mean, they've only gotten good recently as well, but throughout this year, the rivalry has gone the way of the Valiant, despite Mayhem being the better team. And KSP is a big reason why. He's a big reason why the Valiant are even up there whatsoever. I mean, look at that. He's #1 in total final blows across the entirety of 2020.
Yeah, and I believe that's with less time played than a lot of these players as well.
Yes,
I mean, he's getting it done with less games being played. I mean, as well, towering over Yaki and BQB, who are going to be playing most likely in this game today as well. KSP, of course, UK Mafia, always got to shout them out, you know, the boys.
Definitely.
And, I mean, what an absolute star to come out of the United Kingdoms.
He really is. And KSP is also the player with the highest hero damage per 10 minutes out of all of the starting players in the Overwatch League as well. It's only Ding that's above him, and he doesn't really start for the Shanghai Dragons. So KSP has had just one hell of a year. Unbelievable levels of performance. But you look at his DPS partner, who's being fielded today as well, Shax, and if they pair him up on like an Ashe Tracer composition, well, my God, you've got 2 of the absolute best in North America playing those roles.
Yeah.
Maybe their hero pools aren't quite as deep as some of the competition, but if you get them on the right roles, they are insanely deadly.
The team, of course, they're going to be going up against is Florida Mayhem, as we've mentioned many times. And just looking at this lineup, it is pretty standard, generally speaking. BQB and Yaki are going to be trying to match the DPS of the Valiant, and facing Gargoyle in the tank roles signifies to me that we're probably going to be seeing both of these teams play a lot of Winston D.Va comps still. They may flex over. Some teams have been flexing over their main tanks over to the Roadhog, teams like Gladiators with OG. So you do occasionally see, I don't want to claim that as a guarantee, but I think both of these teams will be wanting to play these Winston D.Va comps because you essentially, I think, if you're trying to mainly play a lot of the Roadhog comps, you're accepting that you're not playing, in theory, the better composition because you lack the coordination. And I would say, yeah, I would say to believe that you can take it all the way, you should be playing, I think, some of the teams like the Philadelphia Fusion are playing, what some of the APAC teams are playing. A lot of the Winston D.Va dive. That is my take. It may be scalding hot, but I'm going to sit on it, and I'm going to nurture it, and you can't take it away from me.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair take as well, saying that the better teams are going to be playing, you know, the Sombra, Winston Dive, that kind of stuff. At the same time, though, I mean, if anybody's been following the APAC region, the Seoul Dynasty came out in a 3-0 victory last night, and they were playing double off-tank as well. So there's there is,
I will say,
opportunity for these top teams to still dominate with Roadhog-esque compositions, and I don't think the meta's been solved yet, Bren, at all.
No, we often see when a big switch-up happens, it takes a couple of weeks for the meta to settle, and I do think there are some opportunities where you can run this Roadhog D.Va, Roadhog Zarya maybe, like some teams have been running, on certain sections of certain maps. I think it does do quite well where you need to deny a lot of space, particularly on defense and things like that. But the Valiant's going to be opening up here, and look at this, Dreamer is going to be on the Wrecking Ball. This is one of his picks that he does like to play.
Interesting stuff. KSP on the Sombra as well. It's not something we've seen very much of this season. Not something I can remember seeing much of whatsoever. But pairing alongside Shaxx on the Tracer. Shaxx is now the power player for the Valiant. He has to go toe-to-toe with Yaki and get the better end.
The dive attempt came through from Fate there, but he got booped backwards. Dreamer going to get those shields up as he tried to roll into the Florida Mayhem. And another dive attempt comes in right here into the back. Pile driver going to be knocking a couple of players up. Shaxx hacked up, which means he has to play a bit more carefully, but he still nails the clip. And Fate will be falling early enough here. Valiant with a huge opportunity now to just roll this one straight into them. Look at that. Shaxx, you said it, Josh. He needs to be the power player for this team when KSP is kind of playing that supportive role, playing the Sombra, getting those hacks in. And he's definitely turned up big thus far.
Definitely. I mean, KSP has also been able to build up his EMP way faster than BQB on the other side as well. BQB, a pretty famous Sombra player in the past, but KSP outplaying him in that beginning fight. BQB focused on hacking Shaxx, and you said that Shaxx has to play more passive. Shaxx has got to be one of the most aggressive tracers that we have in the entire league, and he just stayed at the front, playing alongside Dreamer and his supports, and he's going in again.
Early EMP from KSP as he built it up pretty quickly, but Chris answers with the sound barrier. Completely negating it. Still, he's going to be holding the back. And McGravy got D-Mech there as he was a little bit too far forward. The mines are going to be stopping him from aggressing too hard here, but Dreamer's in trouble, and yeah, he's going to get ran down there. The micro missiles, Gargoyle do a decent chunk of damage. And they're going to flip this point over after the Valiant only get 41%. I say only, it's a very sizable amount of capture percentage.
Perhaps KSP thought that Chris wouldn't quite have his sound barrier available there. KSP did build up his EMP very quickly, so it's reasonable to think that maybe the Lucio on the other team wouldn't have built his ultimate up as fast. But when they went for that engagement, unfortunately just completely countered by Chris, and they had overextended deep into enemy territory. So now they've given over the control of the point and a bunch of ultimate advantage to the Florida Mayhem. BQB on the prowl. And Fate on the Winston is just so good at controlling this space, so Dreamer has had to make the swap off the mirroring.
McGravy means that nobody could really protect Dreamer there. He just gets taken out instantly. A lot of this is going to be on Shaxx to try and clutch, but he gets taken down as well. Yaki causing mayhem in the back line. So many kills going his way, and now the Florida Mayhem are evened when it comes to that control percentage, excuse me. And an opportunity for them to take it even further as well when BQB is holding onto this EMP. A lot going to be coming down to this EMP. Technically, the Valiant should have an advantage considering they have the sound barrier.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know where Rain is positioned as well, because BQB should be able to see that. This map is very open. You can see him just stalking his prey. He knows where the Lucio is. EMP used very aggressively from KSP. Catches Chris, but he doesn't have the sound barrier anyway.
4 players getting catched by that, but it looks like Florida are going straight back in with one of their own. The Valiant are going to be opting to use that sound barrier, and that gives them the edge in this team fight. It's always going to be happening, of course. The sound barrier is just that kind of flowchart style of Overwatch where you're just going to be using it off the back of the EMP. And from that ult advantage, they're able to reflip it. A crucial one, because obviously if they ended up losing that fight, probably would have been the round.
Yeah, the Florida Mayhem don't really have that much to work with now, and I'm interested in this swap. Yaki declining the Tracer 1v1, and instead moving to the Reaper. A huge amount of pressure on Dreamer, and McGravy is still out of his mech. It just now gets back into the mech. Able to deal with Yaki when he's pressuring Dreamer.
Ooh, what a dive attempt. BQB just gets blown up from Dreamer, but Shaxx is also going to be falling here, and it means that the Florida have such a large opening, such a big window. The sound barrier used by Chris to try and help his team out, the boot just to get Dreamer away from the rest of the team. Primal Rage is not going to be getting too much done. In fact, Dreamer will be falling as well. Coalescence healing the team up. Jin just finding a lot of work to get done here, and you can see Yaki making the switch over to the Reaper paying off big time. Wasn't too sold on the switch over, but when you are in one fight territory, you can often just play the point, and that really just removes a lot of the shortcomings of the Reaper picking on this particular map as well.
You talk about one fight territory, Brent. Here it is. The Valiant need to be able to touch the point, and they just about do. EMP comes down as well. They melt BQB early on, but they haven't been able to get too much else out of it. If Fate can get his primal up, this is still winnable for Florida.
Still could be winnable indeed. Postmon was ate up there by Gargoyle right at the start of this fight as it was kicking off, but the picks have all gone the way of the Valiant, and they still have so many ultimates here. The sound barrier, the self-destruct. This surely should be a flip, and indeed they do. A bit of time now for the Florida Mayhem. They can stop for just a few brief moments before they have to recontest this one now. But the self-destruct comes through. The Valiant, they want to play aggressive. The hack comes out. It's going to be catching on to Gargoyle. No one able to really just take him out and bring him down, but Gangnam Jim falls as he was using the Coalescence. Shax, the defender of the point, the sound barrier overlaid on top as BQB falls. Means that there's no threat of the EMP being brought out whatsoever. Still, Florida Mayhem continue to fight on as the sound barrier is going to be used on their side of things. The health advantage might be enough to try and get them through this, might be enough to weather the storm, as Rain did get that kill onto Gargoyle. It's going to be making it so difficult, and that will mean that round number 1 eventually goes the way of the Valiant. But you can tell, Josh, you can just tell from that initial round how closely matched these two teams are.
Yeah, that was neck and neck the entire way through. That final fight, even though Valiant had a huge ultimate advantage, there were multiple moments where Florida could have been able to get back into it. I think, crucially, Yaki died right at the beginning of the fight. Okay, BQB goes down, but he's on the Sombra. You can still kind of pull your way back from that, 5v6. But when Yaki dies and your damage isn't quite there, then it gets a bit more difficult. This stage is definitely better for the Reaper than the Tracer, I think.
Oh yeah,
so I understand Yaki staying on it. I'm wondering what Shax is going to do. Do you remember the Shax 6K on Reaper from this map before? That was on Mecha Base of Busan. Yeah. See if we can come out with something just as spectacular for the beginning of the 2020 playoffs.
We shall see. Yeah, he's going to be playing that role here. The team's going to be matching on the high ground. And again, that's what the intention of this comp is. It's very brawly. Going to be slamming into each other. And it will mean that Fate goes down pretty early here. He overstepped himself just a tad. Valiant obviously good enough to just capitalize off of that straight away. Now the point's going to get unlocked, which means that they're going to go down to the low ground. If the Florida Mayhem play this right, they can take positioning off of this.
Yeah, they take the high ground here as well. KSP and Rain up on that upper level, and now supported by McGravy and Dreamer. And the Florida Mayhem rotate around.
Straight away.
Early coalescences for both teams. BQB kept alive. He's going to have his EMP, but so is KSP.
Yep, and he just lets it go straight away. No messing around. BQB hacked up. If BQB goes down, oh, he's not going to be able to use the EMP for this fight. So the Valiant just about squeezed the win. Right. The moment when they needed it. But it will mean that now the Florida Mayhem do have that EMP and the sound barrier to come into this next fight. Still not a free team fight win off the back of this, considering what the Valiant are running and considering what they have. But an opportunity, nevertheless.
Shax just jumps from the high ground like Batman, shoving his Hellfire shotguns into everybody. Dreamer looking like he wants to go for some knockoffs here as well. Can't quite manage it. He's had to disengage. The Valiant have taken a lot of damage here, and Shax falls. Fate hacked up, but he's still pretty healthy. And the Florida Mayhem have just absorbed all of that aggression and shredded it.
That is such a fantastic fight there from the Florida Mayhem, because look at the ultimates. They only used the Primal Rage on Fate. Dreamer was forced to use his to try and contest as well, but it was Fate who got all the value. Dreamer was going for those knockoffs, but the positioning from Florida just completely disallowed all of it. And now Florida are sitting defending here with an EMP, with the Death Blossom, a self-destruct, so many tools at their disposal on top of the double support ultimates. Charles looking gets destroyed, which could be a big deal here, but Florida Mayhem rolling forward, and the EMP was committed there from the Valiant McGravy. 2 kills for him. Answering back almost immediately. Chris using that sound barrier, but it only connects onto 2. Could be a dangerous scenario. The point was flipped over to the Valiant as well. What a disaster for the Florida Mayhem. They had everything at their disposal to try and win this team fight, and now it's crumbling before their very eyes.
It's all disappeared. Rain uses his sound barrier, catches on to 5 players, and the Florida Mayhem are going to take so much damage here. Every ult that the Florida Mayhem had was expended in a fight where they lost control of the point and lost multiple players. What a bomb from McGravy, and now Valiant, they just clean this up and they've got the round.
And this team fight has not stopped. As we've been discussing what happened at the start of it, it's just been never-ending. The teams don't want to give it up. 93%, and now Florida, they have to fight this. They have to win this right here, right now, as they're losing map number 1. The Primal Rage from Dreamer, just to disjoint them. He's going to get hacked up in the back line, so we won't be able to get exactly what he's looking for, but the EMP rolling forward. KSP only connecting it onto 2 targets, but 2 might be all he needs. Yaki falling in the process now. Dreamer just trying to push the players out of the back line. EMP comes through from Florida though, trying to turn this one now in their favor, but the players are not falling. McGravy still getting healed up. That bubble shield just helping him so much here. The hack not able to be pulled off here. Still Fate getting that pick, sound barrier as well on top of that. The players just desperately dying onto the point. It's so scrappy, it's so back and forth, but the Florida Mayhem just barely holding on.
Yeah, they have just cleaned up this fight by the skin of their teeth. The ultimate's coming up in the middle of that engagement, the EMP available, the primal from Fate just to keep his team alive and keep the point contested. And then Chris and Gandamjin with their support ultimates towards the end. But they have sacrificed all of those ults just to have one last gasp of life. 40%, but they're staring down the barrel of double support ultimate. Death Blossom, they've got Primal, and they're going to have EMP in this fight as well. The Valiant have all the advantages here.
Going to force the positioning of Florida down to the low ground, and this is it, do or die. Sound barrier comes through, BQB desperately trying to build up this EMP. He's finally got it. Will he let it go? He does indeed, but it only catches Lastro, and now Shax rolling it in with the Death Blossom. Trading out the kills. Yaki going to be falling here. The overtime will still tick. An opportunity maybe for the Florida Mayhem, but with that D-Mech, their hope will just dwindle more and more. Shax, again, shot after shot, going to be nailing on the opposition, and just like that, that is going to be map number 1 going the way of the Los Angeles Valiant.
Strong first map from the Valiant. They didn't give up a round there. But at the same time, each round that they played was really close. The Mayhem had many opportunities to be able to flip certain fights. Even if the numbers on the board weren't particularly close, the team fights themselves were.
Yeah.
And this is shaping up to be an amazing match. This rivalry, like I said, the Florida Mayhem have never won so far this season. It has been the Valiant the entire way through. But at the same time, we know the capabilities of this Mayhem team. Arguably a bit more flexible, arguably a better all-round team, but they've still been not able to go toe-to-toe with the Valiant across 2020. This is going to be awesome. This is already going to be fantastic.
Early on, it immediately seems like the Valiant have been working on some of their bigger issues, which is KSP's in usually means that they're going to be playing Ashe, usually going to be playing Widowmaker, some sort of main hit scan role. Him flexing over to the Sombra now and picking up this role for his team. Previously, that had to be Shax's role, where he was filling in. This opens up so many possibilities for Valiant, and you can see this flexibility immediately paying off. The Florida are really going to have to knuckle down if they want to try and bounce back from this one map deficit right now. So we're going to see on the other side of the break, can they do it? Are the Florida Mayhem capable of bringing it back toe-to-toe with the Valiant? I certainly think so. We might be going a distance, ladies and gentlemen. Do not go anywhere.
Coca-Cola is the official refreshment of the Overwatch League. The Overwatch League is brought to you by T-Mobile. Switch today and rank up to America's largest 5G network, T-Mobile. And by State Farm. For auto, home, or renters insurance, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
The Valiant currently leading in this series, and it's a series where these two teams have been backwards and forwards the entire season long right now. We're going to get an opportunity to see, can the Florida Mayhem battle back? Are they going to be able to rebound and get this next map win? Well, it's going to be on their terms now, because we're going to be heading over to the new map. It's going to be Numbani, which is their map pick, and an interesting battleground of where they've chose to stage this next map.
Yeah, I mean, you say it's on their territory now, but I mean, it was always on their territory as well, because they're the higher seed coming in here, the Florida Mayhem. So they got to pick Busan as well, and they weren't quite able to come out with the win. They didn't manage to win any of the rounds. So at the moment, it seems like the Valiant have a very good idea of what they want to run. This meta also plays pretty well into their hands. If KSP has been learning that Sombra, and it certainly seems like he has a competent Sombra to be able to play. That frees Shax up to be able to play that Tracer, play that Reaper, and have some really good looks for the Los Angeles Valiant here. It's looking pretty perfect between these two teams right now, but I still believe that the Florida Mayhem can come back into it. Like I said, they're a team that's been able to go toe-to-toe with the Valiant across many series. Their most recent showing was that reverse sweep where the Mayhem went up 2-0 and the Valiant came all the way back, so you can see that they're very close.
Yeah, no substitutions being made either from these teams, which isn't really too surprising. And Numbani is a map where it seems like a lot of teams are favoring it currently. I feel like you can play a variety of different looks, actually. It's pretty good, I imagine, to try and throw your opponent off. It doesn't really showcase what strategy you're choosing to run, at least this early on in the meta game. We've seen teams run the Roadhog compositions, trying to hold the first point. We've seen teams also stick to pretty much entirely to the Winston D.Va. So it really comes down to a lot of what your comfort is. So I am going to be curious now, obviously, seeing what they're going to be capable of. The Valiant playing on the defense here.
Yeah, I'm also intrigued to see whether at any point the teams decide to pull out a long-range hit scan, or whether, you know, once we get up past that kind of 6th best in North America stage, that the metagame in the top of North America, I mean, at the moment, with the limited sample size we have, it seems to be trending more towards these compositions that you're seeing on your screens right now. The Sombra Tracer or the Sombra Reaper kind of rush dive kind of style, where you're aiming to just blow up the enemies, rush them down. Obviously pretty good against Roadhog comps as well, because you have the hack, you have the Reaper to be able to do enormous amounts of damage to that Roadhog in the front lines. So certainly the more that we're seeing these North American teams play, the more the meta is trending towards this kind of stuff.
I will say as well, talking about long-range hit scan, the Valiant running KSP on this Sombra does make it a bit difficult for them if they wanted to flex over. He'd typically be their Ashe player, maybe the Widowmaker player, but in this case, you don't really want your Sombra play switching off and losing a little Volt advantage, so I would probably be falling down to Shax if they did want to play that.
I think you could still get value out of an Ashe Tracer, though, at certain times.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're pigeonholing quite that effectively.
It's an early approach from the Florida Mayhem as they're diving right past that initial choke point, and Valiant are happy to just give them space and positioning here. They're just going to be playing onto the low ground now. A lot of damage into McGravy, caught out of position. He's going to get demeched straight away. Make it pretty hard for them to try and recontest this now when you lose your D.Va player.
Ooh. Faye has fallen, though.
Okay. Yeah, and Faye has fallen. They get the pick up into BQB, so the good news for the Valiant is the longer this fight took place, the thing is, it doesn't really favor either side of the respawns. I say this every time on Numbani, but it's a very important fact because it means that McGravy will be getting back into this fight roughly the same time as the Florida Mayhem.
Look at BQB's ult charge. He's at 85% of his EMP, and he's just been farming it on Dreamer, essentially. If Yaki and Fate can stay alive, they'll have an EMP advantage here. McGravy hacked already.
Yeah, rolling it in, and look at this. EMP comes through straight away. That's a fast build time. Shax's going to be going down. McGravy following up as well as he was desuited. Already a tick on the board for the Florida Mayhem. Fully prepared to just roll into that fighting. you can see that KSP, he's waiting nearby with the EMP, not in a position to, okay, yeah, I mean, maybe just trying
I think
to
he actually
it.
wanted to go for the contest there. It looked like he was trying to contest at the final moments and let the rest of his team push in. I think the Valiant wanted to fight that, but they just messed up the timing a little bit.
Yeah, seemed like it, didn't it? Because, I mean, there would be no other reason why you would just run into that like that.
Exactly, yeah.
Just giving away the ult charge. Let's take a look at that team fight as well as it happened, because a fast EMP timing, I mean, you pulled it out, Josh, it was so key. The target prioritization as well. Shax, when you get hacked up as a Tracer, there's nothing you can do. No. Team fight continues, though. The teams are going to be smashing heads again. The ults are going to be exchanged. Yaki now using that Death Blossom just to lead it in with an early pick. You can see the sound barrier also layered out on top. Self-destruct not getting too much, but it does buy a bit of space now as the Valiant are forced to move forward, and that gives Fade an opportunity to get a lot of work done. Using that Primal Rage already, just trying to find a target or two. It seems like the Florida Mayhem will be coming out on top of this team fight. But if the Valiant are smart, they have an opportunity to recontest this with a big ult advantage.
Yeah, the ult advantage basically because the Florida Mayhem were able to find a pick on Rain early on in the fight. He died to the Death Blossom, which let them use their own sound barrier for free. That kill on KSP is huge. It stops the Valiant from being able to recontest as easily. I think they're still going to go for it, but they're not going to have their Sombra player there at the beginning.
So risky to do this, because if you lose this team fight, you've essentially swapped around the ult advantage.
Lastro hacked as well.
Yeah, the hack comes through. Self-destruct as well, but they're just cleaving through the opposition. And it's going to be an easy cap and a lost team fight for the Valiant here. I don't know if I agree with that recontest. I mean, with hindsight, I can say I definitely don't agree with it, because you've given the Florida Mayhem an in now to build up their EMP, to build up a couple of more of their ultimates. And now, there's a bit of snowball potential.
A little bit, yeah. Rain's still ahead in terms of his sound barrier, so still going to have that to be able to counter the EMP if needed. But I think the Valiant can just try and play aggressive with this. Rain, there we go. He's going to be able to pop it.
Yeah, sound barrier is going to be negating the EMP, but it comes out straight away from the Valiant as well. So, nice display there. Just building up the ultimates right in time. And, of course, going to be stopping that push. I mean, with 4 minutes on the time bank, they had to stop that there, otherwise it was going to be disastrous. And now the Florida Mayhem forced to just think it out a little bit more, be a bit more patient, think about how they want to be approaching this next team fight with what they've got available. It's very even when it comes to the EMPs in terms of where the Sombra players have been farming them, so no advantage
Big difference though is the support ultimates. I mean, Gundam Jin has a Coalescence, they're just going to push with that right now, I think. If they can push with it forwards and just drive Yaki to the front lines, and then they still have that sound barrier to be able to counter the EMP later on, it's looking good for them.
Coalescence comes through, Death Blossom booped into the back line, Primal Rage forced out. Dreamer, he had to use it, otherwise he was going to get chunked down when he was diving into the front line. We'll see if Dreamer can buy enough time for the rest of his team, but he's very low, has to back off in the end. BQB so close now to the EMP, just lets it go anyway. Only going to get it onto 2 targets, but 2 targets might be enough. Rain was one of them, and he got brought down early enough here, but McGravy trying to play the angles, seeing if he can contest at just the right moment. Will unfortunately pay with his life and his mech. Dreamer moving over to the wrecking ball just to try and stall this one out, with 3 minutes remaining. The Primal Rage battering the targets all over the place. The EMP does connect, but Florida Mayhem are well prepared, as the sound barrier is going to be an instant answer and response. And that's a very, very clean showing from the Florida Mayhem with 2 minutes, 51 seconds to work with.
You think about how that went down on point C though, and really the reason that the Florida Mayhem were able to get that kind of time bank is because the Valiant just had such an ult disadvantage.
Yeah.
And the reason that they had such a big ult disadvantage is because of their mistakes during checkpoint B. You know, the early death on Rain when he died to the Death Blossom.
You could argue as well.
Then the early death on KSP.
Yeah, the early death on KSP on checkpoint A as well. Like, they all add up, and you can see if you paint the larger picture, if you start to view it over the course of the timeline of the entire map, you can see how easy it is for just one mistake like that to just get out of hand, and suddenly you're staring down the barrel of a 2 minute, 51 second time bank from the Florida Mayhem.
Definitely. Great credit to Florida as well, though, for playing their ults perfectly, because there are many times where teams will go up in terms of an ult advantage, where they're cycling their ults, and it looks like it should work, but in the end they flop because they mismanage how they're operating. Not so for the Florida Mayhem. Great coalescence towards the end, push Yaki's Death Blossom far forwards, that creates space for the tanks to go in. Fate waits with his Primal Rage, Chris waits to counter the EMP. It was all perfect from Florida, and that's how you set up a perfect time bank score like that, where they nearly have 3 minutes left. This is looking like a great response from the Mayhem after losing an early map 1. You can easily see here why they took it to Numbani.
Yes, very well versed when it comes to this map. Look at BKB just spamming him from the side angle here, just trying to build up his early EMP, well, as early as he possibly can. But Valiant getting an early positioning now as they try and make their way up the high ground. Florida do have to show a bit of respect here because it is fast. Look at that, immediately with the speed boost, going to be diving out. Going to be meeting them straight up, head on. Not holding back any punches, but just trying to pepper each other from afar. Build up these
Dreamer was
ultimates.
hacked.
Dreamer getting hacked, but it does fade, and now he's, oh wow, deleted. Great spot there, Josh, finding that one, but a coalescence as well on top of will mean that the Florida Mayhem, I mean, it's just an instant team fight win. As soon as Dreamer dies there, your chances of winning it just go down so dramatically.
Absolutely, and Dreamer was dead in the middle of his jump. The reason being that he was on half health when he started the jump because he had been hacked previously. So even though he wasn't hacked when he died, BQB's hack had already given them enough damage to be able to finish him off in the next engagement of the extended team fight. These team fights with the Sombra Reaper, they go long. They're slow, they're poking and prodding. And the damage all adds up over time. And it's those tanks where a lot of the responsibility is.
KSP with the EMP obviously going to be matched as well from the other side as BQB has his, and it's going to be an instant trigger pull, but the 6-man EMP comes out from KSP. Is there anyone left to follow up on this? The coalescence is going to be used, but the players are so low. McGravy's gone. Dreamer taken out of the fight. Yaki? Okay. Ends up using a Death Blossom there. Will pay for it with his life. I don't know. The Valiant still feel like this might be winnable. McGravy was being kept alive for a short while, but eventually forced down, focused down here from the Florida Mayhem. And the longer this fight goes, again, the more the Florida Mayhem build up this ult advantage. Still, players from the Valiant are back in now, and they want to go for round 2. Never-ending team fight. Double support ultimates committed once more. Florida easily going to be able to beam down Dreamer, taking him away. No more space being created now for the Valiant to try and get anything done. And it does feel like the mistakes are toppling one after the other here, Josh.
Definitely. The Valiant just aren't able to create the same amount of space with their tank line. I think this is where we're seeing a little bit of the weaknesses of the Valiant, not being as well-rounded a roster as the Florida Mayhem. Yeah, their DPS players are fantastic, but it's not the DPS players that really have the majority of the responsibility in these team fights. It's more on Dreamer and McGravy and how you utilize your ults. And that's a great ult. That's a 6-man EMP with a bit of aggression. Yep. And they wipe the floor with the Valiant once again.
It's just so smart. Like, you just don't expect it. The 6-man EMP early on like that, they were fully prepared. They were probably talking about how they were going to be approaching that next team fight. Want to teleport out just in time. Shax escapes with his life. Florida can be happy with that.
1 minute, 5 ults.
Yeah. That is a good point. Valiant with a ton to work with here. But only a minute on the clock, and I mean, one slip-up could mean a bit of a difference maker. In some ways, the aggressive approach there from the Florida may have helped the Valiant, actually, in terms of just deciding the team fight early enough. But they're going to make their slow wraparound as they're taking the low ground. Fate using his Primal Rage. Yep, and a bit of a flank here. Fate just trying to buy a bit of time as he's just tossing various members of the opposition around. Yaki hacked up.
That EMP did nothing from KSP. Absolutely nothing. They hacked up Fate while they were in Primal, and only now have they been able to get rid of him. Counter EMP comes out now, and Dreamer and McGravy are both weak. This could still be a win for Florida. They've got ults coming up.
They take out one tank, and despite the player advantage being in the way of the Valiant, they have a lot of health working for them. Dreamer's still alive, though, and now the Death Blossom in close quarters, trying to bring him down. You can't. Shax will be losing his life, and now the time just dribbling down to the bare seconds. Oh, wow. Rain forced to just try and contest it, but it is not going to be happening. The pile driver preempted just to try and knock KSP up as he tried to contest. There's only one player remaining, it's McGravy, and he does not stand that much of a chance. The self-destruct to try and stall it out, but no one really on the point to try and stop this one. It's just going to be a matter of time before this map is going to be over. A couple of players still just trying to make their mark. Not good enough. The Florida Mayhem walking away with a very, very dominant map. And again, answering back, that bounce back coming straight up, making it 1-1 at a half.
And that is the word, dominant. The Florida Mayhem are able to set a 3-minute time bank on their attack, just staggering out the Valiant and playing their ultimates so much better. And then they destroy the Valiant on offense. Valiant's tanks weren't able to take any space. They got punished repeatedly. Valiant mismanaged their ultimates. In terms of just the macro gameplay coming out from both of these teams, the Florida Mayhem outplayed the Valiant enormously there on Numbani. I think a lot of this is going to come down to the compositions and the maps that we end up seeing selected, and as to whether it's more of a team fights that decide the overall map win, or whether it's the individuals. Valiant look like they have some very strong individuals, but the teamwork just isn't quite at the same level of the Mayhem right now.
Yeah, definitely seems like that is the case. Still, you can definitely see opportunities where the Valiant might just battle back. Like you said, Josh, with the map picks as that plays into it with the playoffs. Of course, the losing side gets to pick what map they play next. They don't get to pick the game mode, bearing in mind, but they do get to pick the map type or the map itself. So that can always be a massive advantage. And it just goes to show as well, all of our analysts will currently, well, I say all of our analysts, they were pretty split actually. I think it was 2 votes for the Valiant, and I think Johnny was the only one who voted for the Florida Mayhem in terms of the predictions. So it is so even. I think everybody was expecting these matches or these maps and these players to be so even across the board. And we're going to see what our analysts have to say and make it themselves as well as we're going over to the game break. Going to be a short break. Don't go anywhere, guys. When we come back on the other side, they're going to be breaking down all the juicy bits of action.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by Pringles Wavy. Big crunch, big flavor.
welcome to your game break presented by Cheez-It Grooves. We're 2 maps into LA Valiant versus Florida Mayhem. And Valiant, they got off to a pretty solid start against the Mayhem. But as we're going to discuss, it all went a little bit wrong on our second map, Numbani. But Custer, let's talk about your first impressions of this matchup as we went to Busan.
Yeah, on Busan, this was a very scrappy match. We saw them playing somewhat similar comps and sort of going back and forth, and it wasn't clean, to say the least. We see KSP on the Sombra, which is a pretty unconventional pick for him, but he seems to be doing an okay job. But I think the ultimate usage across the board was pretty poor. There was a lot of ults that went by the wayside. The Lucios, on the other hand, were doing a phenomenal job of countering these these EMPs. So a lot of great things, but definitely not the best form of play we've seen. And we saw this transition when we went on to Numbani. The Florida Mayhem really righted a lot of the wrongs that they were making on Busan and did a really good job of playing aggressive, but also getting maximum effectiveness out of their ultimates.
Yeah, I mean, Frankie, I almost need your help here, because the only way I can really describe this matchup is like a slobber knocker. Does that make sense?
A slobber knocker, yep. Yeah, a brawl.
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
Something like that. Bull
Great,
in a China
I got Frankie's
shop.
approval.
2 balls in a China shop. 2 Winstons in a China shop.
Two
Winstons in a China shop. That's how we describe this matchup indeed. But as we headed into Numbani, as Costa said, it was a bit more one-sided in favor of the Florida Mayhem. That's when it really came alive, this entire matchup. They showed that aggression that we saw from the Philadelphia Fusion in the matchup earlier, and it really helped set up the rest of the team for success. Obviously, that gives more space to Gangnam Jin, so he can roam more freely when he gets the coalescence up. BQB can engage and set himself up, while KSP doesn't necessarily have that same room to navigate with on the Valiant side. So it was a great matchup between the both teams, and I think the Florida Mayhem really showed their stylistic difference here, where they were way more aggressive. And I mean, as we saw with the Philadelphia Fusion matchup earlier in the day, it just paid dividends to be this aggressive, and the Valiant a bit caught off guard on Numbani.
And Custer, I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, well, I guess I can jump in a little bit more. I think you got to really give credit to the Florida Mayhem. We said going into this series that if we're going to be playing a dive style, that it's going to be much more leaning towards the Florida Mayhem. They have Fate, who's been a phenomenal Winston player since the beginning of the league, and then you have Gargo, who's a great diva. While I think Dreamer and McGravy aren't really at that level, and we're sort of seeing, you know, the classic term, main tank difference right now a little bit because of the aggression that they're providing.
Well, reinforce, earlier I mentioned Winston's in a China shop. So for Crunch Time presented by Cheez-It Grooves, do you want to talk to us about Dreamer versus Fate?
Yeah. I mean, of course, I think this is an important matchup in this match specifically for many different reasons. And if we take a look at the stats, this is a very interesting stat card, because we can see a clear difference in the final blows, whereas Dreamer gets 2.8 final blows per 10 minutes. Fate gets 5.2 final blows per 10 minutes. But take a look at the damage. Dreamer is ahead of Fate when it comes to the hero damage done per 10 minutes. Primal Rage kills obviously in favor of Fate in that regard. But for the most part, a pretty even matchup so far. It is kind of curious to see that Fate is obviously dominating in the final blows column. Obviously, that probably comes down to their dominance on Numbani so far, and meanwhile Dreamer getting more of that hero damage done in, and I can imagine that's coming from Busan, where you can get a lot of cleave damage in from the Winston. So a very interesting matchup specifically here, because obviously Fate, formerly on the LA Valiant with Costa in the mix as well, and now he's shot calling for the Florida Mayhem, and he is the leader behind this aggression coming out from the Florida Mayhem. So going into the second half, if Valiant wants to step their game up, I think it falls onto Dreamer a lot to dictate the pace of this game and try to counter some of that aggression from the Florida Mayhem, whereas with shot calling, his own initiation with his own leaps. Keep an eye on the Winstons, because I think this is the key hero matchup going into the second half.
I just want to jump on this real quick, because I played with Fate. He's a phenomenal main tank player, and I know the way his mind works a little bit from all the time playing with him, and sometimes he just really knows how to change gears, and I think that's what we saw from the Florida Mayhem, really sort of taking it to the Valiant. So you got to give big props to him, and I wouldn't be surprised if you need to give him a lot of credit for this improvement in the match thus far.
Well, there's going to be no substitutes coming out of the game break, although I might potentially change my camera. If anyone in London wants to give me a new one, that would be really, really great, because my face being frozen is not attractive, it turns out. So we are going to head to a short break, and when we come back, we're going to be heading to Volskaya with Brennan's Sideshow.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by Cheez-It Grooves. Deep flavor, deep crunch. It's a mind crunch.
Well, welcome back everybody from the break, and I hope you enjoyed that little game break as well as our analysts were, tossing it backwards, forwards, front ways, back ways, talking about all sorts of topics, weren't they? Breaking down a series at hand. There were some interesting little tidbits there being shared. Of course, Custer used to be a former teammate of Fate as well, and he used to be a player on the Valiant. So he's got a lot of knowledge and inside talks. And what he was saying was, he was particularly bringing up Fate as well. This is a thing that Fate used to do, where he made these mid-series adaptations that we saw in this series already, from map 1 to map 2. And I think we really need to have a bit of a discussion around Fate as well, just to really big this guy up, because I think a lot of people wrote him off back in 2018. Like, this guy, a lot of people were really just thinking he was washed way back then at the start of the Overwatch League. And here he is now. He's had this resurgence, this redemption arc, although not talked about as much because of other people like Fearless coming in. But he has had a redemption arc nevertheless on the Florida Mayhem, and he has been kind of redeemed in a lot of the senses.
Yeah, I think especially when the Valiant made this split in 2019 between the western half of their roster and the Korean half of their roster, and they ended up kind of sticking with the western half, and the Korean head coach, Moon, who is now the head coach for the Shanghai Dragons, ended up splitting for them, and Fate, for example, went over to the Florida Mayhem. You know, Florida sucked at the end of 2019.
Yeah.
They had a bit of a resurgence in Stage 4, but generally speaking, they didn't look great at the beginning, and people wrote Fate off. They thought he wasn't anywhere near as good as he had been in the past, and maybe didn't have it as a caller anymore, and now he's showcasing that he can still make these mid-game adaptations. His individual level is still really high. He's had a great year so far this year. His Orisa is really synced up with the rest of his team. His Winston has been very good. Whatever the team has needed him to play, it's been at a pretty high level for the Florida Mayhem, and you add to that his shot calling and his ability to find and identify the playstyle that his team needs to play in order to counter the opposition. That's pretty great.
It is. It's truly, truly great. And as we take a look at our map records presented by Xfinity as well, we can start to see some of the fastest times for Volskaya Industries across the board, funnily enough. The Mayhem holding a time against the Outlaws, and the Outlaws holding a time against the Mayhem. So we believe that happened in the same game this year.
Probably.
But yeah, I mean,
neither team wanted to play defense.
Yeah, I just decided. I mean, it could have happened in a very snowbally meta with hero pulls. You never know, but yeah, I mean, just everything you're saying just ringing so true with Fate just being a real cornerstone player for the Florida Mayhem, and a player that's been, I don't want to say criminally underrated, but definitely improved upon, and where other main tank players in that kind of role, in that position, a lot of them stagnate, and a lot of them get left behind in terms of the way to play the game in that main tank position. So for Fate to stay up to date with that, it really is quite impressive. And now he's doing it against his former team, as they have done many, many times so far in 2020. Well, here on Volskaya, you can see the map records as well. These teams relatively even, all things considered. They haven't played it too much, so could be seeing some unknown stuff coming out, but generally speaking, plays pretty standard.
It does seem to, yeah. We haven't seen an enormous amount of Volskaya being played, and it is a fairly open map. I can see people attempting to utilize, you know, we saw some Pharah compositions coming out from the Houston Outlaws earlier on, although that wasn't particularly effective. Yeah. We saw some long-range hit scan stuff coming out, and now it looks like the Florida Mayhem are going for this just same stuff that they've been running for the majority of this series so far. The Sombra, the Reaper, relying on their what they perceive to be superior team coordination and tank duo to be able to win this out. And the Valiant at the moment are hovering on Dreamer on the Roadhog. I'd be a little bit surprised if they opt for this, but at the same time, you can, I think, get value out of it.
Might be going for an early hook to see if he can catch the Sombra. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So here's the thing with this meta, you never know. he could be playing the Roadhog. So, but yeah, just trying to see if he can catch BQB out of position. Nice little pre-fire. If it pays off, then it pays off big. It's going to be sitting with a pretty standard composition. We've seen this all the time so far today, with running the Sombra and the Reaper alongside each other, very brawly. You can see the teams are now going to start to get in each other's faces. The hack does connect onto McGravy. I'm going to see if they can get anything else of it. Big wraparound now from the Valiant as they're just trying to make their approach, and it's this little team fight that occurs in here. The micro movements, the cooldowns, one slip up, one mistake, and McGravy out of position means that this could be curtains. Still going to be looking for an opportunity now, as he's getting a lot of kills here on the Valiant, and yeah.
Brent, that's great for the Valiant. They saw them go aggressive onto McGravy, and they capitalized with 2 picks. This EMP has to be huge. They need to be able to kill Dreamer as well. If they don't, I don't know whether they're going to be able to buy time for these spawners to come in.
Yeah, by definition, space created. He's going to get his mech back as well. I mean, this capture already going to be up to 2 ticks here. Just going to test it, but I believe that just went over the mark, and the EMP is going to stop them dead in their tracks. Fate unable to really help the rest of his team, but it's going to be the double support ults committed now. Florida Mayhem not messing around, but they have used almost everything at their disposal. I've got, honestly, not too much to show for it, because Valiant's still holding on, and with this, they're going to get a very decent cap, and they're going to be rolling deep with the Coalescence, rolling deep with the Primal Rage. A lot of ultimates.
That was a really interesting opening fight. Dreamer ended up getting hacked, and McGravy wasn't. Oh, sorry, McGravy ended up getting hacked, and Dreamer got pressured. And when Dreamer jumped out, McGravy got pressured. But the Valiant was so good at being able to peel, and now they've got a massive ult advantage heading into this. And Fate is the one that has been hacked. KSP coming out with that immediate pick onto the tank.
Snowball.
Fate didn't even have his primal available.
Oh, the snowball potential is so high as well. But they played it so well. The Primal Rage working out in their favor. Just because of that hack, Josh, what you were talking about. Florida Mayhem may be able to come back in here. They have the EMP necessary. Shax loses the 1v1 against Yaki on the flank. That's a critical pick. See if they can convert it into anything else. BQB being pressured so heavily, does not want to be using that EMP just yet. EMP comes through. BQB finding a couple of targets, but only on the tanks. But the longer this fight goes, the better it will be for the Florida Mayhem, and you find it just like that. Dreamer falling means that the rest of the team do not have the positioning, and they were forced back as that fight progressed.
Very close, though. The Valiant, at many points there, could have turned that fight and been able to get the win.
3%.
Yeah, they got a huge amount of capture time. 2 free ticks, essentially. And that's all just on the back of that one mistake right at the beginning of this map, where they overinvested onto the Valiant and got punished for it. And the Valiant have been able to take that single mistake and capture checkpoint A and roll the ult advantage into 2 ticks on checkpoint B. This is crazy, the margins between these 2 teams. One error, and suddenly things go so far in the other direction. The Valiant already using their sound barrier at the choke.
Yeah, sound barrier going to be used very early on. Yaki, Death Blossom gets almost nothing. In fact, he almost pays for his life in the end. Valiant are really stalling this one out. I mean, it was looking a bit unorthodox from them in terms of their approach to this fight, but the Death Blossom from Shax might be big, but Gargoyle answering back with 2. The self-destruct, his team finding the pickoffs, both the supports down. You might as well just call it quits right there.
They used all of their ultimates, though. The EMP came out alongside the self-destruct to be able to secure those 2 kills, and the Florida Mayhem were also forced to use double support ultimate and the Primal Rage. So every single ultimate from the Mayhem used in that fight, a 6 ultimate fight. Now the Valiant can push back in. If they can get up to an early coalescence here on Lastro, that's going to provide the healing they need to break through the choke point and try and find value from an EMP.
Florida getting through this one, and KSP just wants to unleash it anyway. Okay. Didn't catch him on the Rage bomb there, but yeah, they do get to pick onto Yaki regardless of default hack onto Fate just to keep him out of this fight whilst it progresses onwards. The Coalescence from Lastro is doing a decent amount of work, just chunking down the enemies, a consistent amount of healing for his team as well. And Gangnam Jim cannot do anything. He had the Coalescence, but it was not enough. The Valiant now with 2 minutes and 22 seconds in their time bank. Pretty sizable chunk to work with when it comes to Volskaya Industries. You never know how this map's going to turn out, but I love that we've been seeing these adaptations from the Valiant actually, and also kind of just the snowball effect actually off the back of mistakes from Florida. This is exactly what we saw in Numbani, but with Florida Mayhem punishing the Valiant, and now the shoe is on the other foot.
It definitely is. I mean, the Valiant got so much value out of that early mistake. And then towards the end, that final fight there, I thought they were going to wait for Lastro's Coalescence. I thought they were going to play it a little safe. But instead, I think the Valiant's short callers are prioritizing those small windows of opportunity. They saw Yaki in a pretty aggressive position in the front line, and they decided to just use the EMP immediately. So KSP with a very early EMP, but they're able to catch picks off the back of that and roll forwards into the fight. I like that level of aggression that we're seeing from the Los Angeles Valiant. They weren't quite able to pull it off. It was very slow-paced, poking, prodding stuff on Numbani. But this is much more decisive here on Volskaya, and it's netted them a really good time back.
At 2 minutes, you can't scoff at it. It is a decent chunk of change when it comes to trying to work in any advantage you can. Valiant now on the defense, and no changes in the composition again. They're going to be still opting for this brawl, taking it right up. It is, you know, different style maybe compared to what some teams would prefer, but these teams so evenly matched in terms of their hero pools. They are mirroring themselves all the way. Now, Florida just trying to get through this choke point. This early fight is so key, but Chris goes down instantly. Has to be a quick disengage from Florida here, otherwise they're going to give up a lot of ult advantage.
So aggressive from the Valiant, though, immediately. As soon as Florida push their noses in through the choke point, the Valiant are right there. Oh, a hack onto Rain would have been devastating, but he doesn't quite get it.
Just gets out of his life.
Let me see. I'm really interested to see if the Valiant go for another aggressive defense there, jumping onto the Florida Mayhem. This time playing with a little more passive, changing up the tempo.
Yeah, just working around that central hut. You can see KSP just trying to farm up that EMP. So close, 93%. Wasn't able to get it, but Shax falls. An early pick like that, it could be quite deadly. The push continues now from the Florida Mayhem. They are unrelenting, moving down. The Valiant going to be using that EMP, but it only catches onto one target. KSP not getting anybody with it. Jim was just hacked up for a moment, but Florida Mayhem perfectly happy to just bear it, wait it out. Now they can try and win this default fight, and BQB is going to be able to hold on to his EMP.
Yeah, that wasn't a particularly good EMP coming out from KSP. He's played well when it came to that Sombra so far in this series. You can't really have too many faults with it. It's not his normal role, but he looks well practiced. Unfortunately, right there where his team needed him to turn that fight around, he wasn't quite able to deliver the goods. I wouldn't really say, though, that Florida have been punishing mistakes. They've just been finding their own opportunities to win these team fights. It's slow, it's grinding, it's a different style to the Valiant. But again, they find the opening engagement. The positioning not quite as solid from the Valiant, and Shax falls.
A wonderful pick-off here. Florida Mayhem in a prime position to try and snowball this one even deeper. Soundbar is going to be keeping them alive, and now the Valiant just losing player after player after player. Rain has this soundbar, he wants to just hold on to it, and it's this game of chicken that we keep talking about. As long as BQB is holding on to this EMP, neither team wants to really just let it loose, but finally, it's going to be get gone, and now the Valiant going to be using that sound barrier just to try and counter the EMP. It works out brilliantly. The Florida Mayhem are just happy to back off here away from this team fight, see if they can get a pick or two. Gargoyle hacked up on the side here, an opportunity here as Shax moves in with the Death Blossom. He's going to be finding one kill, might even get that D-Mech as well, or at least assist for it, as the self-destruct was committed. The Florida Mayhem have to back off and rethink their strategies.
No defense matrix available for Gargoyle. Shax tracking that one to perfection, honestly. Big value out of the Death Blossom. They did invest double support ultimates into that one, so the delay in terms of time is beneficial, but the Florida Mayhem are going to be up to their ults a little faster. Apart from the EMP, defensive fast EMP engagement from the Valiant here would be crushing.
See what they can do.
They're forced to peel though for Shax, who gets hacked.
Yes, they have to back off. It's a good spot. The manual hack there onto Shax means that they can play as ordered they were hoping for. But look at this, it's the backline, the EMP not coming to any of, really anything at all. And now the Florida Mayhem happy to capitalize.
What happened?
Jumping straight onto it, I am not too sure. KSP may have been forced away, but now in the tail moments of this team fight, only a couple of players remain. And this EMP is going to be, again, cleaning them all up, stopping them in their tracks. And the Florida Mayhem, you thought that the Valiant had a good time. Well, they've just got them beat now by a minute, and that's post the changes now to the Assault game mode as well. So an unreal performance from the Florida Mayhem.
Yeah, fantastic push. And that's, I mean, there were some large mistakes coming out there from the Valiant on their defense,
Love to
but
see
they
where
were
that EMP
forced
went.
errors. Yeah, what happened to that EMP? Because the two unforced errors from the Valiant, the two mistakes that they had total control over, were those two EMPs. The first one only caught Gundam Jin. The second one, as far as I can tell, caught nobody. And I didn't even see where on the screen it happened.
Oh.
Here we go.
Okay.
This is a bit of a replay.
Don't tell me it's a manual hack. It's a manual hack! Wow, BQB, what a player. Wow.
What an insane hack.
But I mean, that's just preemptive KSP. Obviously, in the moment like that, with just the information overload, it's difficult to, you know, tell your brain, don't press Q, don't press the ultimate button while I'm getting manual hacks, because it happens so quickly. I mean, I think the hack's time for it to get off, last time I checked, it was like 0.65 seconds. It's barely any time to register whatsoever. So if you already have in your mind that you need to use the EMP, that's just such unfortunate timing, but BQB with the perfect hack.
Yeah, what an incredible play. I missed that when it was happening live, but that's a fantastic clutch. I mean, what an outplay coming out from BQB to set his team up for 3 minutes of time backs.
It's absurd. And now BQB is just playing recon for his team. He's going to be getting the information for them. Obviously, they know they're not going to be switching up the composition now. And BQB just happily building up and farming up this EMP. It's an aggressive hold now as the Florida Mayhem are just trying to trap them in this room, but the bubble comes down. An opportunity for the Valiant to try and answer back. The hack comes through. Gargoyle Out of position.
Both divas.
Yeah, both divas hacked up, which means that they're struggling, but it looks like the Valiant think they have an edge. The diving comes through. Dreamer so low, lays down the bubble. The Coalescence is traded out. They have to trust in their teams. Both the Winston players backing off around the corners just to survive. BQB, this entire time while it's happening, he does have a small edge with this ultimate. The EMP comes through, connecting onto the targets. 4 players going to be hit with that one. Can they follow it up into anything else? Shax goes down, the D-Mech onto McGravy. And KSP, he just about gave up. A minute left now for the Valiant to try and recontest and repush this. Granted, they do have a few ultimates to use, namely the EMP is going to be the big one. But 50 seconds makes it very scary.
And another fantastic play from BQB, building up his EMP just 2% faster than KSP, but it makes all the difference in the world. And now a lot of pressure on Chris. Chris is here with the sound barrier, and he has to be able to use it in reply. An aggressive play from the Florida Mayhem, trying to force out the EMP early on, and here's Chris in the backlines, ready and waiting.
The Primal Rage is going to be battering them around.
I like this play from the Valiant. They're going to use their sound barrier.
Okay. Yeah,
give them the health advantage. Chris can't reply because he has to save it for the EMP.
Chris now just waiting around the corner. The EMP comes through. Sound barrier coming round the corner. Connects onto 4 targets, but not before the damage is done. The Valiant are finding pick-off after pick-off. Dreamer using his Primal Rage just to get the opening edge now for his team. That pick-off may prove deadly. Florida Mayhem just biding their time once more, waiting for the right opportunity to go in. The ults have faded. The hack comes through onto Yaki though. He won't be able to do much, but fortunately, the Hellfire Shotgun's not going to be disabled. Valiant now going to be losing a player in the end. It's a 1-for-1 trade, almost getting this. The overtime ticking. Florida Mayhem have to commit bodies now. Self-destructs being traded here, or at least one of them being used now as McGravy tries to push them away from the point. Still the overtime ticks. The kill, finally KSP going down. The Florida Mayhem may have just found an opening that they're looking for here. Dreamer just has to dodge that hack. Coming back in, BQB so close to the EMP. Commits it anyway. Not going to be finding anything. Everyone hacked up, but the Florida Mayhem now using that sound barrier still. This fight continues. The Valiant not willing to give it up. Defense Matrix perfect from McGravy. He's going to be eating up the Death Blossom, not letting him get away with any sort of murder. And that was so stressful to cast, so stressful to watch. It's gone right down to the wire. 20 seconds now, Josh, as the Valiant cap point A.
Barely any time remaining, but Florida invested everything into that. They have, what, tank ultimates? And they've given all of the space to the Valiant. All eyes on Rain and KSP here. They have big ults to be able to work with. The sound barrier pushes them forwards, and KSP's close to another EMP. If he doesn't get manually hacked out of it, he should be able to secure his team the win.
Yeah, but he has the EMP. He has to translocate back away from the self-destruct, but the Valiant have played this perfectly. They use all the cooldowns. The EMP comes through. Oh, and it connects onto Chris. This could be an opening now from the Florida Mayhem. They may have just found it, what they were looking for. The hack comes through onto Shax. They take him down. He can't reform out of it. The Florida Mayhem finding the answers right when they needed them. And Gangnam Jim, just the opening pickoffs coming through with the Coalescence. 2 picks. He will die to the self-destruct. This could provide at least one option for the Valiant to try and turn this one around, but it's not going to be enough, and that will mean that they are stopped just shy of that second tick. 50% is what they got, and it was all again off the back of a bit of a misplayed EMP from KSP.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have the best opportunity for it. Like you said, Bren, he had to use his translocator to avoid the self-destruct coming out from Gargoyle, but then when he came back into the fight, it just looked like he wasn't quite aware of where people were positioned. A one-man EMP with no potential follow-up is not how the Valiant would have wanted to finish out that fight. They still get 50%, over halfway. But it's winnable, but it's not guaranteed, especially when Florida was so good on their offense.
So difficult.
And as good as KSP looked in maps 1 and 2, we were praising him for making this change over to the Sombra. Normally a long-range hit scan player plays the Widowmaker, the Ashe, this kind of stuff, the McCree. We haven't really seen him play the Sombra so far this season, and he looked decent at it in maps 1 and 2, but he's made a bunch of errors. I mean, he's also, that hack out of the EMP, you can't really say was his fault.
No, I mean, that's just a timing thing, right?
Yeah, but still, that still means there were 2 fairly large whiffed EMPs here, and BQB has generally been beating him in terms of the time to charge that ult as well.
Yeah, you can tell the gap, I think, in Sombra play is really just cemented in terms of a lot of the time bank here, and the Florida Mayhem going to be trying to answer back with one of their own. 3 minutes to work with is a ton of time. We'll see if KSP can just shore up that inexperience on the roll with some raw individual outplays. Very mechanically skilled player, but sometimes you need a bit more than that when you're playing a Sombra. Florida just waiting now for the cooldown to come back, probably the speed boost before they want to just dive out, and they're going to be wrapping around a bit of a double fake here. They're trading out. How many times have we seen this one play out now as both teams are just, again, trying to build up those ultimates, trying to get off a neutral hack to see if they can create an opening. One mistake, one slip up to capitalize off. It's hard, but they're going to be diving around the backside again, looking for round 2. Fate falling very, very low. Yeah, he got hacked up there, so he didn't have the bubble available, could not mitigate any of that damage. It is so patient, so cautious from both these teams, but finally the coalescences are brought up and Fate taken out. The EMP committed by KSP, the Valiant holding on. Now they're going to be cleaning up the rest of these players, and KSP, the important thing is he didn't die in this fight, which means he's building up even more of his EMP during the tail end of it.
Very good play though from the Valiant. Throughout that engagement, they got better hacks off from KSP, kept prioritizing them onto Fate repeatedly, and Dreamer and McGravy were able to rotate their aggression more effectively as well. Previously in these fights that have been slow and drawn out, Fate and Gargoyle have been the better tank duo, but in that instance, Dreamer and McGravy outplayed them. Now the ult advantage though in favor of the Florida Mayhem, and like you said, Brent, this comes down to how effectively BQB can execute and where Rain is positioned. You can see him on top of the hut at the moment.
BQB is going to be...
is already up to 60% of his EMP.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He didn't die in that last fight, so he had ample opportunities. The Coalescence is what they're going to use to lead it in. Self-destruct as well to force the positioning. You can see Chris tried to boop them into the line of sight of it, but it unfortunately didn't pay off. They were too far away. EMP from BQB, but who does he commit it onto? Surely doesn't want to use it here, the default hack. Very intelligent, stopping Dreamer right away, and now Fate. That gives him ample opportunities, moving into Death Blossom. Yaki finding one, Rain goes down, and he died with the sound barrier. BQB not even having to use his EMP. The Florida Mayhem going to be capping up this point now with the opportunity to just snowball it even further.
That was so nicely played from Yaki. Such a smart teleport into the back lines. There's no way that he could be pressured. And they were scared, honestly, of the EMP coming out from BQB. They were scared of that. Dreamer had to commit his Primal Rage. They gave up a lot of positioning, and Florida Mayhem, again, just the brute force of that front line dominates the competition.
Be right back.
If BQB can catch Rain with this EMP, they might be able to win here. This is still so close between these two teams. Anyone's game.
Yeah, you really don't know who's going to be winning this, but the initiation comes through. Fate using that Primal Rage, and now you can see the aggression from Valiant. They're leading it in with the Coalescence. They need to get an early pick. They recognize they have to take some risks with this. The EMP is going to be connecting onto a couple of targets, but Rain instantly coming through with the Soundbire. Shax with 2 kills. It's a clean team fight win, and only 18 seconds remaining for the Florida Mayhem to find any response. And I wonder now, the Valiant, with every ult at their disposal, they can just hold on, maybe get the forward hold, batter them back. I don't think anyone's going to be capable of touching. Chris is going to be making the approach, but look at that, the boop away!
He got booped.
The boop! Cannot body block him. Chris will get the overtime going, but Fate has already fallen. KSP with 2. The overtime trickling down. No one else will touch. No one else will help the Florida Mayhem. And Los Angeles Valiant is going to be coming back, answering back, and making it 2-1 in this series thus far.
It's tense, it's close, it's divided by a knife's edge between these two teams. The Florida Mayhem had a lot of opportunities there in a big time bank. They played the first round of Volskaya much better than the Valiant did, but their pace, their approach to the game is much slower.
Yeah.
Right? They're taking these slow duels where they're trying to edge out the opposition and play the frontline battle, whereas the Valiant, when it got to that second round, they just went full-on aggression. And it was the full-on aggression that is better when you have less time on the clock. Obviously, you're able to create those opportunities for yourself much faster and play against the clock in that kind of way. Whereas the Mayhem, even though they were successful, they just didn't have enough time in the time bank to be able to pressure point B, didn't have an ultimate to be able to snowball. And that's how the Valiant are able to squeak out a win there on Volskaya. It is so close between these two teams, just purely neck and neck.
Absolutely ridiculous stuff that we've seen from these teams. And one mistake in these comps, you see the way these team fights take place right at the start when neither team has any ultimates whatsoever. It can come down to just a single hack. One target out of position, one hack onto the right target can mean just an absolute snowball, a defeat because of the ult advantage off the back of it. You have to play so perfect when you're running these compositions, and we are being treated to a masterclass here. We're going to be going to a quick break. On the other side of things, we're going to see, will this story conclude? Will we see the Valiant walking away with the win once again, or will the Florida Mayhem really go against the grain of history? We're going to find out. You don't want to miss it.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by T-Mobile. Switch today and rank up to America's largest 5G network, T-Mobile.
I definitely didn't just kick my chair across the room as I panicked when the timer kicked down. I didn't realize we didn't have enough time, but we're heading into it. This could be the final map in this series thus far of the Valiant versus the Florida Mayhem. Currently the Valiant leading 2-1, and it is shaping up to be nice and spicy because the Valiant, statistically, we were just hearing from behind the scenes as well. Ben was, reading the numbers as he does, in the Matrix. He's plugged himself in. Yeah. And it says, he's looking at the numbers and he's like, by my calculations, the Valiant shouldn't be winning. I mean, he didn't exactly say that, but that's how I imagine him when he's surrounded by monitors. But yeah, the Valiant have been very clutch throughout this series. A lot of team fights, a lot of individual plays, finding moments, weaknesses. While over the course of the entirety of the season, it seems like the Florida Mayhem are playing the better game. And this has honestly been the case. You could say this for a lot of the series and a lot of the times these two teams have played against each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Florida Mayhem are considered the better team. They have the higher seeding in our 2020 season. But when it comes down to the actual matches themselves, when the Valiant play against the Mayhem, the Valiant have been winning. The Valiant find those moments to get max value out of their clutches, out of their players. And it doesn't matter if you lose the majority of the team fights if you win the ones that are the most important. And that's what happened there on Volskaya. The Florida Mayhem were winning the majority of the time, but the Valiant chose that one moment to really step it up and elevate their level, and they ended up coming out with the win. At the end of the day, that is what matters when it comes to Overwatch. Numbani was a bit of a wash. First map was also pretty good from the Valiant as well, though. You got to say, like, Shax stepped up there. KSP played a pretty good Sombra as well. Yeah. I'm interested, though. I'm excited here for Gibraltar. We haven't seen very much Gibraltar so far in the 2020 playoffs, and I'm hyped to see what's possible here. You would think that it is only a Winston map, right? Like, there's so much verticality to be able to play those kind of heroes. I am assuming that that's the case. But at the same time, it's also a great Widow map.
Yeah, Goats existed for a year. True. So teams still played that. Yeah, but traditionally it's always been that, but we could see different stuff, right? I mean, you would think if there was any time to bring out the Widowmaker, it might be here with KSP on the team, and they're teasing something.
I'd love to see it.
This, I think, is just going to be an early hook, an early peek with the headshot.
Yeah.
Sleeping, just seeing if they're pre-firing an angle. Yeah, and probably going to be making switches. So just default comps again. Teams
back
wanting
over
to
to
mirror. Ooh, interesting.
And this mirror has not been decisive in one way or the other, but that is a decisive engagement to the team fight. Florida Mayhem just collapsed on them from the high ground. Shax had no idea. He had literally no idea that they were going to do that. He was caught completely unawares and paid for it. That's 30 seconds ticked off the clock, and the cart hasn't moved.
And a team fight win with Shax down. I mean, it's not going to make a huge difference with him being dead, because the Death Blossom isn't exactly one of those key ultimates, but every little helps. And now, Dreamer steadily trying to build up that Primal Rage. He has a little bit of a lead, and it is just these trading of blows, looking for hack targets. Dreamer hacked up, the Coalescence, they might want to try and press the go button on this one. Moving forward, seeing if they can trade out any of these kills, but it will be the Valiant using their own Coalescence to keep the team alive.
Yeah, it's just so even.
Yeah, very, very even. The EMP going to be committed as well. Full-on aggression coming out from the Florida Mayhem. They have to get a pick off, and they get the D-Meg. Might even be able to get something else. Wow. Dreamer using that Primal Rage. Death Blossom into the back, moved away. What a play, what a star. The TP. Oh, not in time. Almost Yaki just about. Almost had that one, but Dreamer with some clutch movement coming out with a Primal Rage there. Wonderful stuff. Just juggling him straight off the cliff.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts. I thought Yaki had a great opportunity there to use his Death Blossom. The Florida Mayhem invested a lot of ults there, trying to slow down the pace of the player, which obviously favors them on defense. But Valiant turned it around. A pretty good counter EMP coming out from KSP, and Lastro, he's going to have that Coalescence to be able to counter here in just a second.
Bubbles
Dreamer
down.
can survive.
Dreamer's dead. And Dreamer hacked up. Fate now his turn to be hacked up in the end. Gargoyle coming in with the self-destruct. Why not? 2 more kills off the back of it, and now the Florida Mayhem. Surely they're going to be set up to succeed here. Fate as well, surviving on a sliver of HP is going to be a big difference maker. You might not even think it, but it means that Jim can build himself up to 50% of the Coalescence off the back of him being almost dead.
Yep, that is enormous, actually. It sets them up for a double support ultimate advantage going into the next fight. And they both teams have that EMP available too. So as quickly as the momentum was in favor of the Valiant, it flips the other way around. Pretty much all on the back of Dreamer going down as well. He got hacked, he got pressured, and he couldn't stay alive until Lester had his call available. Now it's the battle of the EMPs.
EMP's going to catch KSP while he was invisible. Yeah, it's a 6-man.
But there's no follow-up.
They just back off. I think that was too ambitious, honestly, of an EMP there. They were in a position where they could just back off instantly.
On the high ground. How does Yaki follow that up?
KSP though comes through with the EMP himself. Yeah, and Fate was the real target, but yeah, you're right, Josh. They caught Chris. He wasn't close to that sound barrier, but would not have any opportunity to try and build it up or answer back. Still, now he's got it coming in later with his team fight with the double support ults. Florida have a bit of an advantage in this fight, but can they convert it into any kills? That's the important factor that we need to consider here. Again, more ultimates being popped off as Fate's just trying to disrupt in the back line with his Primal Rage. The self-destruct from Gargoyle, again getting a kill. KSP going down. How many times has Gargoyle got value out of that bomb? It seems so many this series long, and he saved his team once again.
Really huge stuff coming out from the Florida Mayhem there. Fantastic response. Their positioning when the EMP came out from KSP was beautiful, just to all draw back. They fell back, they gave up the room, and Chris was there with his sound barrier. He was about 3% away, able to build that one up. And now it's desperation. 10 seconds remaining. Who's even going to be able to touch? Is KSP there?
It's going to be difficult for him. KSP just about. They might be able to get onto him with the fade. It's so hard, but the EMP comes out so preemptively. Every player of Valiant is just really just sitting ducks, aren't they? They can't do much in this scenario with the overtime going now to Coalescence from Florida. Keeping their team alive, making sure they chunk down remnants of Valiant.
Valiant are close to ult.
Yeah, Valiant now using that Coalescence, but getting hacked out of it. Lastro not going to be able to get it all off. Still, Shax moving forward, has the Death Blossom as well. Look at this, the Defense Matrix coming through from Gargoyle, but not enough to keep him standing. The Death Blossom committed just so that he can take him out. Or just take out Yaki in the end. And finally, the Valiant are going to be clutching that one up. It looked,
man, oh
it
man.
looked so close, too close for comfort, in fact. But again, the Valiant clutching in the tightest of windows of opportunity. You just cannot ask for a more clutch team currently against the Florida Mayhem. It seems like the Florida Mayhem, Josh, are playing the better game. And honestly, by a large amount, they are. But the Valiant, again, just these opportunities that they're finding, it's just elite.
Yeah, it really is. EMP comes out there from KSP. It's only a one-man onto Fate. Gets countered by Chris's soundbar, and Fate stays alive. Gonna be able to build up to that primal rage as well. And Yaki, he's in the pack. He's getting shunted down into the basement layer at the moment here.
Oh, no.
But he unleashes his Death Blossom to take down McGravy. This is gonna be a fight win for the Florida Mayhem. And you can tell just in the normal engagements, Florida have the advantage. But when it comes down to those crucial fights that they must win, it slips through their fingers.
Yeah, almost every single time.
This is actually an issue that we were highlighting in the previous match when the Valiant played against the Florida Mayhem. The reason that they were able to reverse sweep the Valiant was, okay, partly because the Valiant are clutch, but also because Florida, they don't close out their situations very well. It's a big reason why Florida haven't made it to the elite level this series,
KSP?
or the season.
Oh, he has to reload. That is the most awkward 1v1 I've ever witnessed, but there we go. That's playoffs, baby. Sometimes you just catch the scraps. 1-for-1 trade means that the Valiant are not in an opportunity to push this one through.
That's a great pick.
BQB going down is meaning no EMP for this next fight from the Florida Mayhem. Dreamer being pressured a little bit, but then Jim falls as well. So the Valiant on the attack. They win this team fight out. It's going to be pretty scrappy, but they are going to be able to take it.
They're just staggering. They're just staggering and choking again, Brent. This is like 30 seconds left. They need to win one decisive fight, and already they've set themselves up with a disadvantage. I don't know whether there's something mental playing into this game, whether Valiant are their boogie team or what, but the Mayhem, when it gets down to these tight timings, they're throwing it away.
Card's going to be moving in here, just about touching this one. Gargoyle with the self-destructs. He's been so crucial, so critical all series long. Going to be buying a bit of space for them this time, but it's going to be McGravy answering back. The translator comes through. Somebody needs a touch. Oh my goodness, McGravy self-destruct pushing them away. And that gives Valiant all the space in the world just to glide it into that second checkpoint. What a disaster.
And McGravy says C9 lulz in the chat. In a playoff game, in the North American upper bracket quarterfinals, he's saying C9 lulz. He's getting into their head.
Yep.
The Florida Mayhem have already started choking here. This is match point for the Valiant, and they're throwing away Gibraltar.
Psychological warfare has been inflicted right now. Maybe breaking a bit of the Geneva Convention, but the sound barrier from Chris just to try and save his team. The 1-for-1 trade in the end, and finally, Dreamer goes down, the D-Mech on McGravy, so Florida Mayhem are going to be able to hold on to that one just by committing the ultimates at the right time. Chris found a nice opening for that one. Oh, the orb taking out McGravy as well, why not? 40 seconds.
Deep breaths here for the Florida Mayhem. You have the ults to be able to win this fight. You have the EMP, you've got the Coalescence. You have the advantage. And there's 30 seconds left. The pressure is on the Valiant to perform here. There needs to be some magic from the Valiant to be able to complete this map. But the Florida Mayhem have given them many opportunities so far.
Translocator back there. BQB not having it now to see if he can lead into EMP initiation. But seems like Florida want to be making the play anyway. Coalescence and the self-destruct. Trying to combo it up, see if they can get a pick. And they do. McGravy D-mexed. It's almost as good as a kill in many scenarios, if not better. The tanks are so integral with this composition. Going into the overtime, someone needs to touch this car right now. Just about drifting by it there. I believe Dreamer touched it with his leap, and now he's going to be paying with his life because of it. A couple of players remaining, but not for much longer. Rain has the sound barrier, but he's going to be coming late into this fight when so many players are down. Might be able to get it off to give Shaxx a bit more extra life. Probably not going to be occurring though, and the EMP will clear them all out. Stopped just short of that third checkpoint, but let's be real here. The Valiant just got away with murder.
They totally did. The Florida Mayhem win that final engagement, but that is 1 out of 3 clutch fights that they won. They lost the other 2 in surprising fashion. The first one, partly due to incredible play from the Valiant, but the second one, not touching the payload in that kind of instance, and having the Valiant, like, giving them that much space to even begin with and trickle in the players, like, a lot of mistakes came out from the Florida Mayhem there. They're still in a very winnable position. This could definitely still go to map 5, but I'm starting to get pretty worried.
Yeah.
The Valiant look like they have the psychological advantage. They look like they're the team that is taking control of this map and finding the winning moments and making them theirs. Here's that moment again.
McGravy's bomb. And Gargoyle's movement there was so clean, but his booster just ran out. And he didn't have that final bit to contest the card. That is, I'm not kidding, inches away from contesting. You saw that difference. You saw that slow-mo. It was just contested. Like,
at the same time, though, Brent, they set themselves up in a bad situation to begin with because they were just bleeding players coming into that fight. So as much as you can like say that the Florida Mayhem did all they could in that C9 instance, there were mistakes that even led to them being in that position in the first place.
Yeah,
so
you're right.
I think I think that this is Valiant's to win right here.
I mean,
you've got to say that they have the advantage.
It would be crazy. They're 1-3 on Gibraltar so far over the course of 2020. It is not a good map for them. That is part of the reason why Florida Mayhem have decided to take it to it. But, like you said, Josh, I mean, it's looking like the Valiant are running away with this right now.
They've got the winner's mentality.
They're winning in the clutch moments, right when it matters most. Now it is just that classic default engagement.
Hack on KSP.
Yeah, hack on KSP is going to be forcing it back, but it's going to fade away almost as quickly as it was applied. Yaki now out of the Wraith form, and the team is going to be engaging back onto them. Is that going to be a D-mech? It is. McGravy out of the mech. One more tank gone now for the Valiant. The Florida Mayhem have a huge advantage in this. An early Primal Rage built up. The Coalescence as well. It looked like that was all gravy for the Florida Mayhem, but unfortunately, he left their team a long time ago.
Very true, very true. McGravy getting his revenge over the course of this match. That's a great defense starting out here for the Los Angeles Valiant. Mayhem getting up to a bunch of their ultimates as well, but Rain is miles ahead of his opposition. 30% ahead of Chris in terms of the sound barrier. Rain's been playing a great game so far today as well, in terms of having those sound barriers available for EMPs. BQB is still 20% away, and Rain's already there. He's got that ready to go. BQB's just kind of hanging out at the top as well. Florida have got the high ground here.
Yeah, Fate just went straight in with the Primal Rage! Yaki! What a Death Blossom, taking out Lastro, removing him from the fight. No more heals now for the Valiant, and they're playing so far forward. They need this heals now from the Moira player. Right now, Florida Mayhem in a great position to try and aggress onto them when they don't have that Moira left standing, but they're doing a good job of just backing off. Sound barrier now used by Chris, still backing off. Finally, the picks are going to be going their way. But at what cost here, Josh? Because 2 minutes remaining, they're only halfway through checkpoint A. It's going to be one more contest here from the Valiant, and they've got ultimates to work with.
It's going to be a rough contest, though, for the Valiant, because they have to keep Rain outside of the choke point in order to counter the EMP.
Right.
So they're going to be playing without a Lucio at the beginning until BQB commits that ult. That's difficult to be able to get through when you don't have that little bit of extra healing to be able to go with. But look how aggressive the Valiant
Straight
are.
into the backline because they know Chris is there to try, or they know Rain is there, I should say, just trying to basically push him away to EMP. Not going to be coming out. The translocator was used, so forced away through the choke, and now Valiant have positioning.
Florida are so slow, they're so tentative. They're trying to outplay their opponents, like you said, Brent, by diving into the backlines to find Rain. But instead, Valiant are taking all of the space, and Florida Mayhem aren't controlling the tempo. They're reacting.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that Gargo got demeched as well, so that buys even more time for KSP to build up the EMP, for them to build up these ultimates. But it's got to be now. You have to try and go in for a play. Maybe into the EMP, just committing it early, forcing out the sound barrier, maybe backing off. They're going straight in. Shank's very low. Coalescence coming out from both of these teams, keeping each other alive. Self-destruct's again traded, but it seems like Gargo will be the one paying with his life. Ended early in this engagement, and the Valiant still on this defense. The Primal Rage from Dreamer gets a lot of work done. Just creating enough space for his team to capitalize. 40 seconds remaining. Florida not willing to give up any space.
But they're just holding this EMP forever, and now KSP's got up to his. Chris is nowhere near. Because the Florida Mayhem have been playing so safe, Chris is still 40% away from his sound barrier. A massive advantage here to the Valiant in this fight.
Opportunity maybe for them here. The Death Blossom, it could be deadly, but the sound barrier to answer it. Yaki again, he's just going to be paying with his life. Once more, trying to clutch it up for his team. 15 seconds remaining. If they stagger this now, it's going to be brutal for the Florida Mayhem. Players are back though, they're coming off the back of the respawners. They might try and capitalize this, so Florida will have one opportunity to contest this now. One final team fight to touch this point. They're going Gonna get this overtime going right now. Fate, though, hacked up on the cart. Can't go anywhere. KSP takes out Gangnam Gym, and BQB comes through the EMP. Will there be the follow-up? Dreamer falls. The sound barrier as well. Surely this should be it now for the Florida Mayhem. The players will crumble and topple, but it was so difficult. The Florida Mayhem had to fight tooth and nail to try and make it this far. A couple of dregs from the Valiant as they just try and contest this slowly, buying as much time as possible for the spawners, for their players to get out of there.
They got me sweating. The Florida Mayhem fans everywhere have got to be sweating. It's so close. There's 2.5 minutes on the time bank. They have control over the Gibraltar high ground, which is massive when it comes to these kind of mirrors. But the Valiant have the aggression. They are taking control of the tempo. And Florida always have to react to what the Valiant are doing. I love the way that the Valiant are playing this. They're going to get closer in EMP, and I'll bet you that KSP uses it just as soon as he gets it.
Here we have it, the Coalescence coming through. And then Jim KSP with EMP. They've already got 2 picks though. Are they going to be able to capitalize on this? And KSP was forced to translocate out of it. The bomb into the back line, but unfortunately not enough to catch him. And Florida Mayhem, they look in charge of this fight. A much better EMP from them will basically stagger a lot of these targets. And the Valiant now, you have to reconsider how you're approaching this team fight. You may have one more opportunity here, but the card is moving at a blistering pace.
Yeah, perhaps a little too overzealous from the Valiant to lose 2 players and still invest the EMP. That's not the aggression I'm talking about. Look at Yaki, and he's going for Batman-esque rubble play.
The Death Blossom is there, but they catch him out, and so he has to reform away. The bomb! It's a classic maneuver. We've seen it twice now. Gargoyle's bomb buying so much space, and no one from Valiant can touch.
Huge control over the positioning there from the Florida Mayhem. They had the high ground, and they apply with the C9 low.
Oh my goodness.
This is a true rivalry.
The table's turned, hasn't it? It really has, and plenty of time to work with now. The Valiant were in a great position, but that has just faded away, crumbled before their very eyes. Only a couple of ultimates that stand between them and the Florida Mayhem, slowly pushing this one in because the Coalescence has already unleashed. The Primal Rage from Dreamer. Just going to be staggering out the back line as he tries to create a bit of space, but someone needs to touch this car right now. They are 1 meter away from just rolling it in. Finally, the Valiant going to be getting up close and personal, contesting it out, but EMP does not connect onto Shaq's sound barrier. Perfect. Rain coming in with the timing just when it was needed. An opportunity once more for Valiant to try and hold on to this one. The Coalescence, Lastro has it, but he's not choosing to use it. Doesn't want to unload it yet. Florida Mayhem are backing off, playing patiently once more.
Yeah, another slow-paced game here from the Florida Mayhem. KSP's got his EMP. Chris in a position to respond. But Florida need to initiate. Oh, look at this flank from Yaki. He's got his Death Blossom available as well.
Maybe 1% away. He could have it, but the Coalescence comes out preemptively from Lastro. That was in response to Yaki's flank. In some ways, can pay itself off just trading that for that ultimate just to come out. And okay, Death Blossom as well committed by Shax here, but they've only got the 1 pickup onto BQB. And Florida, they know full well that they can just play defensively here, accept a lot of the aggression coming their way from Valiant, and maybe even pick somebody off if they're making a mistake. But no, neither side really wants to give up too much.
BQB, 68% of his EMP. KSP immediately in. That catches 3. Chris there with the response, but it's too late.
Yep.
Fate has already fallen. Couldn't use his Primal Rage either. Can they get the punish?
Oh, what a bomb from McGravy as well, just to force them all back, and it forces the cooldowns as well. Yaki no longer has the Ray form. He can't play aggressively in the front line, but he's going to TP there anyway. He wants to try and seal it. He's on the high ground. Booped away though. The Death Blossom gets nothing. It absolutely gets nothing, but it matters not. The Florida Mayhem ripping forwards. The EMP layered on top, and they will push that card in, and they will take it to map 5.
Fate says Z9 in the chat as well. That was so close. That entire map was unbelievably close between these two teams.
Yeah.
I thought Florida had thrown it all away when they made a bunch of mistakes on their defense, and then their point A attack came down to overtime, where they almost seemed to refuse to invest ultimates. This slow-paced gameplay from the Florida Mayhem, it's methodical. They try and engineer ultimate advantages, but there's many opportunities for the Valiant to find moments of clutch, moments of aggression to completely ruin what the Florida Mayhem are going for. This is a mirror match in terms of the compositions, but not in terms of the styles. And we're headed to our final map.
Yep, so sick. I mean, we said it was going to be close. I mean, people were asking me the other night as well, what do you think is going to be the closest game of the day? I said this one. These teams are so evenly matched. All the analysts were split across the board. No one really knew how it was going to be shaping up. We knew that they were probably going to be mirroring each other. And I mean, my word, it's living up to the expectations.
Do you know who I have in the final map?
Who?
The Los Angeles Valiant, baby.
Oh my God. You've been waiting this entire time to show your side-shaved head. I know the people were wondering, they're like, did this guy really shave half his head? Little do they know that you were dumb enough to make a bet with the Valiant at the time. It was Custer when he was playing on the Valiant. And you said they will not make top 10 in the seeding. And if they do, you will shave the Valiant logo into the side of your head. So there you go. Well, there's the context of that.
Yeah,
I'm not going to.
I mean,
yeah, I'm not.
Works for that little bit, though, doesn't it?
I'm not going to give you any more time to explain yourself because we're going to go to a break. And on the other side of it, this series will be concluded. We will have our winners, and one team will be moving on into the upper bracket. Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back.
Coca-Cola is the official refreshment of the Overwatch League.
Welcome back, everybody. Yes, it's coming down to the wire. It is map 5 in this series between the Los Angeles Valiant and the Florida Mayhem. And what a series it's been. We've had ups, we've had downs, we've had EMPs cancelled, we've had a lot of hacks, let's face it. There's been a lot of Sombra play. But my goodness, it is shaping up to be a great one. And it always is with these two teams. They are always evenly matched. Even right now, it seems like it was almost scripted that they would end up here in the playoffs.
True, yeah. I mean, this has been a rivalry that has spanned the entire season so far. And it's a rivalry because, I mean, not only is it people playing against their former teams, Fate, you know, who got shipped away from the Valiant, McGravy, who got declined from the Florida Mayhem, for example. But at the same time, both of these teams tend to have very similar styles. You know, they've got star Tracer players in Yaki and Shax, who we now both see on Reaper over the course of this series. They've got star Hitscan players in KSP and BQB, both of which have made the change over to Sombra for this series. The teams themselves play similar styles, similar compositions, and we've seen that play out in this series with a mirror match with the Sombra Reaper for basically all of our maps here. And you can't divide them. The previous match was a reverse sweep with the Valiant taking the win 3-2. Florida Mayhem not quite able to close it out. I thought we were going to see a similar scenario there on Gibraltar as well, with Florida just letting the win slip through their fingers.
Yeah.
But they have one last chance. They have one last chance to beat the Los Angeles Valiant, for the first time this season. Florida haven't beaten the Valiant since stage 2 of 2018.
Definitely feels like, definitely feels like it's their kryptonite. It's the
They
thing
are.
that's stopping them from moving forwards. And, I mean, you can just tell over the course of this series that it is Florida who seem to be winning statistically. They're winning a lot of these team fights, and it's great team play, and they're not dying as often. But the Valiant just pulling wins out of thin air at times. Just really finding those micro moments to just, oh, there's an advantage there. Yeah, I'll have that, please. Right in my basket. And it's been non-stop this entire series long, and it's been honestly the case as well in previous times that these two teams have faced off.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the Valiant can just rely on individual moments, like, you know, maybe McGravy just identifies a moment and so makes a play. Same with KSP and Shax. Each one of their players is high enough level to be able to identify those small moments in the fights where they can have a bigger impact and go for some kind of aggressive play. And whereas the Florida Mayhem are very much more reliant on that team synergy, the slow-paced kind of style, working based off the ultimates. It's going to be a mirror match again here as we head into Gardens. Ah, this is so close.
Yep.
Who will progress to face the Philadelphia Fusion?
The teams are so evenly matched. Now we're going to find out as well. They're going to be trading once again, seeing who can build up that early lead, see who can get those early hacks off. You can see the Lucio players as well, just trying to boot somebody forward, maybe catch somebody out of position. Nobody able to get a hack just yet. Just waiting, but Shax is going to be hacked up now on the floor. Can't really move forward with the rest of his team, but a dive attempt here from Fate. The bubble comes through. Trusted that his team is going to be healing him up here to Coalescence. Might just chunk a couple of them down. Hand in the background, in the corner, and Dreamer is going to be that first casualty. Shax follows up afterwards. It will be that first capture going to the Florida Mayhem.
Yaki has been such a strong presence in this front line. They're trying to push Yaki as far forwards as they possibly can to be able to maximize damage output onto Dreamer and McGravy. It means he's a bit more vulnerable. He has been taken down in some of these big EMP moves immediately, but it puts so much pressure on the Valiant tank line in these slow fights.
Yeah, double support odds though for the Valiant. We'll see what they can do with this one. Dreamer just dives into the backline again with the Primal Rage, trying to disjoint them. Fate goes down pretty early on here. The EMP was committed, and Jim's still hacked up, but will be actually just backing out of this fight as well, because his team ended up losing it. The Valiant's shifting the progress over to their side.
Fate was 1% away from his Primal Rage when he died. He died at 99%. If he had been able to pop that Primal, it would have reversed the entire tide of that fight. Tiny, tiny little differences are making all of the difference in these team fights.
Yeah, you can see the standings from Shax very early here. Does get the soundbar out at least from Chris as they try and lead it in. Shax will fall as well as he was coming at the tail end of that of the Death Blossom, unable to use his Wraith form. Will end up falling, and McGravy as well with the DMF and sent straight back to the respawn queue. Means that just as quickly as that, Josh, the Florida Mayhem found an advantage, capitalize off of it, and flip it back into their favor.
But Chris no longer has the sound barrier to counter KSP's EMP. Oh wow,
what a
they're
pick.
picking off Shax early on in a lot of these fights. Shax is just finding himself out on an island, a little bit far away from the rest of his team and getting picked off, whether by the Sombra or just by being hacked. That's a good advantage for the Florida Mayhem. It allows them to start building up to some of their other ultimates as well. You would still expect the advantage to be in favor here of the Valiant, but they still have to push. Always harder to push.
Yeah. Nice spot there onto BQB. They force it back with the translocate. That was a wonderful peel coming out from McGravy. No longer have the EMP. KSP leads hit him, but it only catches onto Gargoyle. It's been a recurring factor in this series thus far, and the counter EMP is going to be coming out here. Fate now with the Primal Rage.
He killed Rain in the middle of his sound barrier.
No
Rain
way.
couldn't hit the ground.
He battered him in the air, so he didn't even get it off. That is so brutal, man. So brutal. And yet the Valiant still hold strong. Finding the pick here onto BQB, making sure this team fight goes the distance. And Dreamer with the Primal Rage, he takes out Chris this time.
That is an unbelievable clutch play from Fate, but it doesn't make the difference overall. They get it to 99%, which is definitely in their credit. And they do have Chris closer to a sound barrier, so there is an advantage for them as they go for the recontest. But that, I definitely feel like that play was big enough that it should have really gifted them the team fight win.
Yeah. What a play for Fate as well. God. Just juggling the Lucio there in that moment, just spotting that he was going to have to do the sound barrier. So high level, and now we see another play being made. What a Great pincer maneuver there from the Florida Mayhem as they just try and wrap around with the Coalescence, but it's not good enough. The Valiant had a much better answer to it. They end up coming out later with the Coalescence, they pump in enough damage, and they're able to just find a few targets. A very necessary team fight win considering the advantage they were in. One loss now, and that's going to be the round.
It was a nice pincer attempt from the Florida Mayhem, but again, it was ruined by the aggression of the Valiant. The Valiant aren't giving them time to set up these nice elaborate plays. Instead, they just ran into the front line and killed Fate at the beginning of the engagement. EMP are ready for both sides. Rain still 20% away from his sound barrier. That could make all the difference right now. BQB flanking up the left-hand side.
BQB has the EMP. Shacks of an early Death Blossom though. An opening pick onto Gang and Jim might just turn it, and there you go. Another one as well on top of it. KSP comes through with the EMP. Now the sound barrier from Florida Mayhem as Dreamers trying to just juggle as many players as humanly possible, but the point has been flipped over. In the meantime, while all this was going down, no way, the tail end of that Primal Rage phase still gets the kill. What a player. And at the tail end of his Primal Rage is going to be able to glide to safety to the rest of his team, clean up the stragglers. The bubble placed gently on top of the self-destruct means that nobody will be falling down to that ultimate, and the overtime. Well, only a couple of players remain to stop it, but it's not enough. The Florida Mayhem taking the first round in map 5 here.
They almost lost it. Shax with the Death Blossom at the beginning is another example of fantastic aggression from the Valiant, but they just couldn't overwhelm the ult advantage. Once Rain survived and was able, once Chris survived and was able to pop his sound barrier, he just kept the rest of the Florida Mayhem alive, and the advantage ended up being far too much. And Fate with a beautiful play as well to separate Lastro, the main healer, from the rest of the team. Here's that beat, the play that we were making so much noise about. Rain unable to hit the floor.
That is so good.
It didn't matter at the end of the day, though. It didn't matter because the rest of the Valiant didn't die from the EMP. The Florida Mayhem weren't in position to be able to capitalize. Still, though, you got to give credit to Fate because that is just beautiful. Chef's kiss.
Yeah, of course. Don't bring the guy down. I mean, those kind of plays are just nasty.
They are.
They can be the difference maker in these playoff scenarios. But here we have it. Second round here of map 5. It's all coming down to this now. Florida Mayhem just one round away here from sealing the deal, closing out this series. The Valiant, they are playing so passive, so patient now, waiting for an opportunity to see if they can go back in off the back of a hack. KSP working in these off angles. He's building up his EMP very quickly here.
Yeah, so fast. The hack onto Rain is interesting, but nobody's really able to capitalize.
Coalescences are traded out. This team fight's going to continue and keep going, but KSP, he has the EMP compared to BQB on 60%. KSP now, hopefully his team's in position, and now he's going to let it loose. It connects onto 4 targets, exactly what they needed. And that's all off the back of KSP finding the openings, finding the opportunities to just pump in that consistent tickle damage.
Yeah, really phenomenal play by him. He built up the first portion, the first 50% in lightning level speed. And that's a bit of a difference as well between who each team is prioritizing in their front line. The Valiant are giving that space to KSP to build up those ults faster, whereas the Florida Mayhem are giving that space to Yaki to put damage onto Dreamer and McGravy. It's a different approach, a different style. And KSP makes good use of it there.
Yeah. Florida Mayhem with plenty of ults now to try and make their mark. Hack is going to come through on the Dreamer, just about connects, and they're going to be diving straight into it now with Death Blossom on top of that. Shax, I should say, was using it to try and peel away, and as it fades away, it's enough damage that Yaki will fall. Dreamer destroying that translocator now to stop BQB from getting back out of the fight. It's a nice cleanup from the Valiant here at the end of this to just still hold on to this point and still hopefully start to rotate these ults. But the downside is the Florida Mayhem now working with 4 coming into the next fight.
4 ultimates, but KSP still has another EMP. He's been able to build them up so rapidly. This is his second EMP for BQB's first. Because Florida like to play the ults perfectly. They don't want to play too aggressive. They want to set up the perfect situation. But it takes 66 seconds to be able to set up the perfect situation. So they've given up that percentage of the point.
BQB waiting in the background, and yet that translocator gets used, so probably not going to be an aggressive EMP hold, and the way this point plays out, they can just keep running rings around it, stalling it out until it might just get to 99%. You can see the beams being crossed here. Never really want to do that, but seeing that the Self-Destructive Gargoyle does take out KSP, and that's going to mean no more EMP for this fight. Dreamer almost getting the kill there onto Chris. Chris so low, but just about escaping with the rest of his team. Still, the Valiant are winning this fight, despite the fact that they lost their Sombra player so early on. 97% and counting. One player will be able to touch this, and yeah, it's Chris. The Lone Warrior hacked up, just trying to escape here, but he's being chased down on every single front. The overtime now still ticking, and the players are coming back in with the ultimates. Florida, they have to pull out some sort of miracle to try and turn this one now, but BQB falls, unable to get the EMP off. Lastro follows it up, and as soon as KSP is in position, you notice EMP is getting let loose straight away. And there you go. The overtime will still burn, as there's only 1 or 2 players still left remaining on the point, Josh, but it is pretty much done and dusted at this point. We are truly going to be going the distance here in this map.
Yeah, this is going to be final round, final map territory here between the Florida Mayhem and the Los Angeles Valiant. That was beautiful from the Valiant, though. And all came down, realistically, to KSP's faster EMP in that first fight. Because once Valiant had control of the point, the Florida Mayhem play so slowly that they are never really finding that perfect situation. BQB, by the way, Brent, did not use the EMP that entire time. He didn't use a single EMP in that round.
Really?
Didn't use it. He was holding it the entire time.
Yeah, holding on to it at 66%, waiting for the perfect opportunity.
Yeah. He might have used it right towards the end, but the fight was already lost, right?
Yeah,
like, he didn't use it in a moment, because the Florida Mayhem aren't finding those moments, because their playstyle isn't as aggressive as the Valiant. Valiant are saying, we don't need the perfect opportunity, we create the perfect opportunities.
It's how a lot of the top teams play, the full-on aggression, forcing mistakes out of your opponents, and it seems to be paying off pretty well for Valiant. Still, it is going down to the wire, and whoever wins this first team fight is going to have such a huge advantage for this entire series. Hack onto Gargoyle, the hack onto Dreamer, trading off of the tanks here, just playing patiently, waiting back, and neither team wants to give up early contention on this point. Whoever gets this first cap will have an enormous advantage, but you cannot give up bodies either. Still, Fate falls early on. They're capable of trading it out. It doesn't look like it. No players in position. The Coalescence comes out from both of these teams, but it's a fast EMP from BQB this time, trying to take it straight to them with aggression. They're only able to get 1 kill onto Dreamer, but they do not cap the point. The Valiant are going to be in control of this one for now.
Yeah, there was no main tank there. Fate wasn't present, so they couldn't make space and do the cleave damage necessary to follow up on the EMP. And now this is almost worst case scenario for the Florida Mayhem. They don't have control of the point. They don't have their EMP. They're pushing into an ultimate disadvantage, and they're a slow-paced team. This is looking really hard to come back.
So hard to come back in, and you can see Rain getting the kill here onto BQB. That is actually brutal and potentially game-winning, considering BQB is again in another fight where he cannot build up the EMP. So much is played off of this EMP rotation, and the fact that KSP can just hold on to his, wait for the perfect time, it's perfect for Valiant right now.
It definitely is. The Valiant are impressing me so much with their aggression. Look at them going forwards now. They identify that Yaki is off on a tight angle on his own. Separate him from the healing. Pick him up. This is wonderful stuff. I think Rain got cancelled out of his sound barrier there as well, though. Perhaps hacked, something like that. But at the same time, the Valiant have won that team fight anyway, just by virtue of their aggression. And this is what the Florida Mayhem have failed to do this entire series, is find those opportunities, create those opportunities. But the Valiant are putting on a masterclass in how to do it.
BQB still 20% away from the EMP, and again, an aggressive EMP is going to be met with a defensive sound barrier as Chris tries to save his team, but the damage is done. The sound barrier might just save you with the health, but eventually they focus the fire down, and BQB finally unleashes the EMP of his own, but it's too little too late. All the players have fallen. No one remains from the Florida Mayhem here. The Valiant holding strong, Josh. 90% in counting. Can anybody even touch?
I don't know. It's going to be desperate. There's a swap over to a Doomfist just to be able to try and clutch this out in the final moments, but
4%,
the Florida Mayhem...
the boop, knocking him away. Rangers taking this 1v1. Someone did manage to get that overtime going. This is so deadly. Such a worrying scenario for the Florida Mayhem, but the Valiant are probably smiling right now in the final moments of this round. BQB falls early. That's a great opening, a wonderful opportunity. And now to dive in from Dreamer. Wants to try and set his team up for success. Self-destruct coming in. The Coalescence doing so much work as Yaki will fall. Another player down. The sound barrier concatenated on top. You're finding it. They're getting the heals. They're getting the support necessary, and no one can touch. No one can stand up to them. The Los Angeles Valiant are going to be walking away with the victory here and moving forward in the upper bracket.
What a dominant showing on that final map. McGravy popping off as well. Former player for the Florida Mayhem. I think he adds that extra energy whenever the Valiant play against their rivals.
Oh, yeah.
BQB with his head in his hands as well. It was so close for the Florida Mayhem in terms of the map score. But when it came down to Valiant's pick of Oasis there at the end, they just really didn't have a chance. McGravy settles his webcam back into position as well after throwing it across his room in happiness. KSP has never felt the touch of joy upon his brain, so has the same facial expression as he always does. But that's got to feel good for the Valiant. They progress forward to play against the Philadelphia Fusion, but crucially, they keep up their winning ways against the Florida Mayhem. They have not lost a match against their rivals at that 4th, 5th position in North America this entire year. They've just got something extra when they play against the Mayhem.
And it could be that McGravy factor. We don't know, right?
Yeah,
I mean, the fact that he's playing against his former team, how they kind of, quote unquote, did him dirty. He's probably got a bit of a score to settle. I mean, how many times do you need to settle a score before it is eventually settled? Because, I mean, they've beaten them every single time so far in 2020. Yeah. It is kind of absurd. And that will mean, as I said, Valiant are moving forward in the upper bracket. They will be playing against the Philadelphia Fusion. They know their opponents now. They know what they're up against, and it's going to be a tough matchup. And unfortunately for the Florida Mayhem, they're going to be moving into the lower bracket now. Not out of the tournament just yet. But enough about that. Let's talk about the match at hand as well, because we've got our player of the match sponsored or presented by Xfinity, and it is going to be Rain, the Lucio player. A bit of an unconventional pick for, I suppose, the player of the match, but I feel like Rain has a bit of a difficult job of things, honestly. Trying to get the EMP timing so that the sound barrier comes in right in time, trying to connect it onto a lot of the members of his team. Yes, he had a few, funny moments at the end, maybe getting juggled out of his sound barrier here and there, but overall, he was a consistent factor for the Valiant success.
Absolutely. A big credit to Rain as well. And this was not just the sound barriers coming out, but also being part of that aggressive play. The speed boost engages that the Valiant employed to be able to put the Mayhem on the back foot. I think that this was a team effort for sure from the Los Angeles Valiant, but I think it's nice to be able to highlight the Lucio players in such a difficult mirror match here as well. When your EMPs are getting charged so quickly on the other side by BQB, to be able to counter them at such an effective rate, to the point where Fate has to invest his primal just to stop you countering the EMPs. I mean, that is enormous stuff. And Rain was always in the right place at the right time. A great showing from the whole of the Los Angeles Valiant, though. You're right, Brent. It's a tough road ahead. They're facing our #1 seed. But this is a team that looks like they're playing some of the best Overwatch that they've played all season long, actually. Oh, yeah. And here you can see the matchup at hand, so you can actually visualize it. Fusion versus the Valiant. And remember, that's still like the upper bracket. That it gives the Valiant another opportunity here to go further forward. Maybe it's going to be a difficult match against the Fusion, but it's not over by any stretch of the imagination for any of these teams. And now we've got our losers bracket match here, right down in the depths, and that is going to be on Sunday. The Gladiators versus Mayhem is now set in stone. That is going to be one to watch for sure. I think these teams are going to have such a cool clash of styles, and loser is going to be it. That's it for the 2020 season. For whatever team ends up going out there in the losers bracket, that's their season donezo. So it is all shaping up now in the final moments of the playoffs. What a wonderful tournament it's been thus far, and we are barely any way through it. This is the second day. Yeah, I know, it's fantastic. The games get good so quickly in North America between these middle-of-the-pack teams. It's just so competitive. Yep. We've seen the Florida Mayhem and the Valiant all season long battling with each other for that gap of like the 4th best team in the North America. And at the same time, we've also seen the Mayhem battling against the Gladiators multiple times. Really long, extended series that have been messy and sloppy, but so entertaining. We get that as a rematch as well. I'm so excited for that. Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be fantastic as well. And I hear that we actually have a nice little interview as well. Custer has got McGravy on the line, so I want to hear all about it, gents. Don't hold back.
Yes, thank you very much, Brent. I am here with the man himself, McGravy. So, you guys have a bit of a rivalry going. Apparently, you have to go to map 5 time and time again. But all that aside, the important question, what happened to your camera during the pop-off? I'm very curious.
I don't know. These series are so intense. Once we won the series, I kind of just lost control. I just started punching anything that I could just to get a little of the energy out. There's so much energy brimming from the match. I just started hitting stuff. I had to hit something. So the desk and the camera were the first to go.
Yo, KSP looked very excited as well. You should have seen it. He had like a small smirk. It was
I
exciting.
I can already see his face.
So, okay, going into the match, you guys played this Reaper mirror dive style that we haven't seen that much. Were you expecting a mirror when you came into it?
Yes and no. The toughest part was the scrim meta or whatever. As the matches kind of progressed, we kind of realized that Sombra Reaper was like, well, a lot of people think it's like the most well-rounded comp that can beat anything. So I think we kind of expected Mayhem to adjust because Albert talked about flexibility and be able to change his comp on the fly. So we kind of expected anything, but I think we kind of knew Sombra Reaper was going to be the mirror, and we were really confident in it. So we were just ready to rock and win the mirror.
Yeah, so you say you're confident on it. We saw KSP play Sombra, which we haven't really seen much of this season. Is that a new thing for him, or are you just sort of adaptation at the fly?
It's kind of a new thing for him. He's never had to play Sombra for us. It was just one of the things that we know he's really good at anything that he plays. He's really down on himself. He thinks that his scan one trick, but the dude can literally play anything. So it's just getting him to getting him in the right mindset to be able to play the hero. But he's wicked good at literally anything that he plays. So it's new, but we have faith in him to play anything. So
yeah,
worked out.
No, absolutely. But so this is something I'm watching because I'm a Lucio player, and it was really interesting. BQB was holding his EMP. I assume you guys sort of noticed that throughout the entirety of the series. How did you guys adjust to that sort of play style with the EMP?
I think Rain had a really good read on what they were doing, and I think by map 5, you could kind of see that we weren't rushing our EMPs as much because we knew they were just playing for the EMP advantage. So we were just straight up rushing them because we knew they were really hesitant to use their ults. So like if we just ran in, we didn't even have to use an ult, we'd get a really good fight because they were so hesitant to try and deny the beat with the EMP. So we just started dry fighting basically with no ults, and we started winning fights just with 0 ults, and it paid off big time.
Yeah, University, you guys pretty much walked over them at the very end, so it was sick to see. So moving forward, up against the Philadelphia Fusion, they had a pretty clean win against the Gladiators today. Are you confident going into that matchup?
Funnily enough, Philly's been our scrim partner for the entire week. We probably played Philly 6 or 7 times, and I think both of us probably feel pretty good about the matchup. But we're probably expecting another Sombra Reaper mirror. So it's just the same thing we did today, just playing our game and being confident in the mirror, and it's me a close match just like the one we played.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my bracket's still intact because obviously I believe in the Valiant. So McGravy, thank you for keeping my bracket alive, and congratulations, man.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. All right, guys, stick around. We have more Overwatch coming around the corner.